Before we begin, if you find comfort in these quiet journeys through time, feel free to gently like this video. It helps guide other weary minds to these calm shores as well. Now, close your eyes if you wish, and imagine the hush of waves against a wooden hull, the creak of rigging swaying in the night wind, and lanterns casting soft gold on worn planks. Tonight, we drift into the forgotten world of the Caribbean's Golden Age, when pirates roamed warm seas under star-filled skies. Let the tide of the story carry you gently aboard. Life before the sea. In the hush of a tropical dusk, I sit with memories of a time before the sea claimed me. I was once a young man in a world bound by poverty and strict order, serving as a lowly sailor on a merchant ship out of England. Life on that merchant vessel was brutal, meager pay, harsh discipline, the captain's lash never far from reach. Many nights I fell asleep, aching and dissatisfied, dreaming of something freer. Stories drifted from port taverns of a different kind of life, the pirate's life. They said a life of piracy might offer freedom from the harsh discipline of the Royal Navy or the hard work and poor pay of merchant shipping. It was a life not of forced obedience, but of choice and camaraderie. At 18, with calloused hands and a restless heart, I listened well to those whispers. I remember standing on the wharf in Port Royal as a youth newly arrived from Europe. The year was 1685, and Port Royal in Jamaica was like a living legend. By then, I had endured Atlantic crossings under tyrannical officers and watched good men die of fever and flogging. The New World sun was hot on my neck as I labored unloading cargo, yet I felt a strange excitement. This bustling port had an air of dangerous promise. Here, so it was said, men could slip the yoke of kings and live by their own rules. The taverns overflowed with boisterous laughter and clinking mugs. Hardened privateers swaggered through muddy streets in tattered finery, gold hoop earrings gleaming and pistols at their hips. These were men who had once sailed under commission to raid Spanish ships, now turned outlaw since the war's end. They spoke freely of riches seized on the Spanish main, and of the articles, the ship's code they swore to follow together. It all sounded like a paradise of rogues, terrifying and tempting. My old life held little allure. Orphaned by war in Europe and pressed into naval service, I had no family waiting, no fortune to lose. The promise of pirate life glistened like the sun on the sea. I would be lying if I said lofty ideals drove me. Truthfully, it was hunger for freedom, for respect, and yes, for gold that steered my course. Others were like me, former sailors, escaped indentured servants, or poor lads seeking fortune. Turning to piracy was a way of making money when other opportunities were scant. And so, one humid night, under flickering tavern lanterns, I made my choice. I fell in with a crew of rough-handed men, led by a charismatic quartermaster, who bought us all a round of rum. He and the crew sized me up as I spoke of my sailing skills. When I bared the scars of navy floggings on my back, they raised their cups in understanding. They too bore marks of cruel masters and swore no pirate captain would treat them so. A cheer went up when I pledged myself to their company. In that moment, I had a new family, the Brethren of the Coast. They called themselves with pride. Before dawn, I slipped away from my former ship, carrying nothing but a small bundle of clothes and a head full of hopes and fears. Down at the crooked pier, the pirate sloop Twilight Fortune rocked gently, silhouettes of her masts cut against a purple sky. My heart pounded as I climbed aboard quietly. A few crewmen on watch nodded a silent greeting. No questions asked. We all had our pasts. and they were left ashore. The salt breeze carried the scent of the wide open sea. On that deck, I felt the weight of old shackles fall away. Still, I would be dishonest to say I felt only joy. As the first light of day crept over Port Royal's rooftops, I leaned on the gunwale and gazed back at the twinkling lights of the town. A gull cried somewhere over the bay. I knew that once we sailed, I would be an outlaw in the eyes of empire, cut off from the life I'd known. Uncertainty tugged at me like the gentle current below. Change was coming, and with it, risk. But an inner voice, steady as a ship's keel, told me this was the path to reclaiming my destiny from men who had long controlled it. I inhaled deeply, tasting the brine in the air, and made peace with my choice. In the east, a new sun began to rise, as if beckoning us onward. Thus did my life before the sea end, a chapter closed with quiet resolve. I was no longer a nameless cog in a king's machine. I was a pirate now, about to learn what that truly meant. With the dawn came a fair wind, and I, along with my newfound brethren, prepared to set sail toward the horizon and into the annals of the Golden Age of Piracy. Setting sail from Port Royal, a golden sun climbed above the Jamaica hills as we set sail from Port Royal, painting the harbour in hues of honey and rose. The twilight fortune caught the morning breeze in her canvas, and slowly our ship glided away from the wharf. I stood by the railing, watching Port Royal shrink by the minute. The town was already stirring sails, unfurling on merchants and fishing boats, longshoremen shouting, tavern doors creaking open after a long night. I could see the crooked lanes hugging the waterfront, the jumble of wooden buildings and stone storehouses. This notorious haven was said to be the wickedest city on earth, a place of gaudy displays of wealth and loose morals. Indeed, Port Royal had effectively become a pirate republic in the late 1600s. English and Dutch privateers once called it home, spending Spanish gold in its many taverns, gambling houses, and brothels catering to sailors. Even now, in 1690, remnants of that era thrived. Pirates from across the seas mingled here, swapping tales in a dozen tongues. The entire town seemed built on rum and plunder, a Babylon of the New World. As our ship drifted past anchored sloops and brigs, I took in one last sweep of Port Royal's shoreline. It was hard to imagine that beneath those sunlit streets lay the ghosts of an earthquake. Only 2 years past, in 1692, a terrible earthquake had struck at mid-morning, swallowing half the city into the sea. The ruins of that disaster were partly visible even now, broken piers jutting from the water, rooftops peeking above the gentle waves where once busy markets stood. Incredibly, the survivors rebuilt what they could, refusing to relinquish their outlaw paradise. The town's spirit lived on defiantly, though tempered by tragedy. The twilight fortune pressed onward, sails billowing softly. On deck, the crew moved with purpose, their mood eager. We were about 30 strong, a motley assortment of Englishmen, Irishmen, a few French, and even 2 Africans who'd won freedom by joining the Brotherhood. Shirt sleeves were rolled up as men hoisted the mainsail, securing lines with deft knots. The quartermaster, Jones, barked amiable orders to trim the jib and angle us out of the harbour. Our captain, Avery, stood near the helm, one hand on his cocked hat to keep the breeze from snatching it away. He was a lean man with sun-crinkled eyes, quietly confident, unlike the blustering naval officers I'd known. Captain Avery spoke rarely and softly, but when he did, the crew listened with respect. He had proven his mettle in past cruises. I was told skilled in strategy and fair in divvying spoils. We slipped past Fort Charles, its cannons silent in the dawn. Soldiers on the ramparts watched us leave. Perhaps they thought us honest merchants departing early. We flew no black flag here in home port. We were cautious not to invite trouble at the doorstep. As we reached open water, the bustling noise of Port Royal faded. Only the gulls followed, wheeling and crying overhead as if bidding farewell. I looked over the side at the clear Caribbean water, brilliant turquoise near shore, darkening to sapphire further out. Flying fish skittered away from our bow. A school of dolphins even appeared, silver arcs leaping in our wake, an auspicious sign that drew cheers from a few crew. Out on the open sea, a hush fell that first morning. The wind filled the sails with a contented flump, and the wooden hull creaked in response, a ship's gentle conversation with the waves. For many of us, this was a moment of introspection. I certainly felt it, a mix of relief and uncertainty. The land was behind us. Ahead lay only the endless horizon, and whatever fortune or peril it concealed. I had left behind the last ties to law and nation. Now the sea would be my only country, and these men my only kin. With the sun climbing higher, routine gradually took hold. 2 crew members swabbed the deck with holy stone and seawater, whistling a tune as they worked. Another man scaled the ratlines up the mainmast, as nimble as a monkey, to take his post as lookout in the small crow's nest. His sharp eyes would scan for sails, be they merchant prey or hostile frigate. At the bow, I saw our carpenter and his mate already inspecting the cable and anchor windlass, ensuring all was sound for the journey. In these quiet tasks, we transitioned from the chaos of port to the order of our own making at sea. I found a moment to lean against the taffrail at the stern and reflect. The Palisado's sand spit that sheltered Port Royal was receding fast. Beyond it, I could just discern the outline of the Blue Mountains inland, mist clinging to their lush peaks. Jamaica looked peaceful from afar, green and inviting. Would I ever touch that soil again? Perhaps not for a long while. If destiny favored us with bountiful prize ships, we might not return to Port Royal at all, but instead seek safer haunts to trade our loot places, like the remote cays of the Bahamas or Tortuga's hidden harbors. Nearby, Quartermaster Jones approached and clapped a hand on my shoulder, breaking my reverie. "You've the look of a man saying his goodbyes to old Jamaica," he remarked kindly. Jones was an older fellow, weathered as driftwood, with a greying beard braided into 2 forks. He had been with Captain Avery for years and carried the weight of authority among the crew. I admitted that I was indeed taking in the sight. Jones nodded. "Aye, best remember it well. There's a chance we won't see dear Port Royal again soon, and if we do well, she may be changed. The sea's a fickle neighbour." He gazed back at the coastline thoughtfully. I understood his meaning. In a pirate's life, nothing was guaranteed, not even a return to one's starting shore. The Royal Navy could be lying in wait, or more natural calamities. One never knew. We sailed on. The morning air warmed, yet a pleasant breeze kept our sweat from clinging. Some of the men began to hum a work song as they coiled ropes and arranged the deck. The gentle melody High Barbaret, I recognized it eased any lingering tension in my chest. I found myself humming along under my breath as I helped check the lashings on our pair of 9-pounder cannon. The rhythm of shipboard life was comforting in its own way. We had left behind the raucous revelry of Port Royal and come into a different world, one with its own rhythms and laws. In those first hours at sea, I sensed a great shift in my soul. The land, with its vices and rulers, was astern, and ahead lay the purity of the open ocean. Out here, the only authority was our own collective will and nature's whims. I felt a thrill realizing that every man aboard had signed the same code and had an equal vote in affairs of moment. There was no tyrant captain to starve or flog us for sport. We would steer our fate together, as free men. As I coiled a line, I noticed a lad of about 16, Tim by name, looking, similarly awed at the expanse of sea around us. He caught my eye and grinned. "Never seen anything so wide open, have you?" I teased gently. He shook his head. "Never, Jack. It's like a great blue plain without end." I clapped him on the back. "Get used to it, lad. That plain is our home now." And so we left Port Royal behind, our spirits high and a tingle of adventure in every heart. The sins and sorrows of our old lives were carried off on the wind. In the bright morning light on calm waters, we had been reborn, in a sense. I stood by the mainmast, letting the spray of the waves kiss my face, and felt truly alive. For better or worse, I was sailing under the black flag now, though it remained furled until needed. The taste of salt on my lips was the taste of freedom. Before noon, our ship was well out of sight of land. Only sky and sea surrounded us, a great blue dome meeting a darker blue expanse. I felt an almost childlike glee bubble up. There were no boundaries here, no walls or courts or kingdoms, just the creak of the ship's timbers and the course we chose. Somewhere beyond that horizon were Spanish treasure galleons, heavy with silver, or English merchants fat with sugar and cloth. There were ports yet unknown to me, coral islands with hidden coves, and perils too, storms and navies. But we would face them as one crew, under a Jolly Roger when the time came, and by the articles we held sacred. As the twilight fortune sailed steadily into the blue, I took one last glance back toward where Port Royal had been. Nothing remained of it now but a memory and a faint smudge on the horizon. I murmured a quiet farewell. Farewell to the boy I was on those streets, to the fear and servitude I'd known. Turning forward, I embraced the salt breeze and the unknown journey ahead. The ship pressed on, and the wide open sea welcomed us into its eternal embrace, as gently as a mother rocking a cradle. Daily routine on a pirate ship. The days that followed taught me the true nature of a pirate's life, surprisingly ordinary at times, and governed by routine as much as by adventure. We did not spend our hours in constant battle or drunken revelry, as the balladeers back in port might imagine. In fact, one thing became clear quickly. Very little of a pirate's time was spent fighting or plundering. Most days, survival and shipboard chores were our main concern. Life at sea was both simpler and harsher than life on land. The sun rose each morning out of the ocean, and with it rose the crew of the Twilight Fortune to face a new day's tasks. At first light, a gentle bell or shout woke the men sleeping below decks. I often slept in a canvas hammock swaying between beams, a simple bed, but comfortable enough once you got used to the rocking. Only the captain had a small private cabin. The rest of us bunked in the open hold or 'tween decks, among spare sails and barrels. As dawn's grey filtered in, we clambered up yawning, barefoot on the dewy wood. The tropical mornings were warm and damp, the salt air instantly clearing one's head. We would stretch our limbs and trade quiet greetings. There was camaraderie, even in these groggy dawn moments, a clap on the shoulder here, a joke about someone snoring there. Each man then turned to his duty. Unlike a navy ship run by strict hierarchy, on our pirate sloop, tasks were often shared or rotated. Still, everyone understood what needed doing. A few went to fetch buckets of salt water to swab the deck. 2 men relieved the night watch up in the rigging, and at the bow, poor fellows who had stood alert under the stars while we slept. The ship's cook, an older West African named Kofi, stirred embers in the brick box that served as our galley hearth and started preparing a simple hot meal. If we had yam or plantain, he might fry slices of it, or else heat up a gruel of ground corn. Often, it was just ship's biscuit and a bit of salted pork for breakfast. The remaining crew busied themselves with maintenance, coiling ropes, checking that the cannons were secure, airing out damp bedding in the sun to prevent mildew. One of my regular tasks as a capable seaman was to inspect and oil the weapons each morning. Our ship carried a modest armament: 4 small cannons, sakers mounted on swivels, a chest of muskets, and many pistols and cutlasses for boarding actions. I laid out a cloth on deck and disassembled a musket, using a bit of whale oil to wipe the barrel clean of overnight rust. This was critical work, because at any moment we might spot a prize on the horizon and need our arms in top condition. The pirate code itself demanded such diligence. To keep their piece, pistols, and cutlass clean and fit for service was one of our articles. As I worked, nearby 2 of the older hands would sharpen swords with a whetstone, the rhythmic shkt, shkt sound filling the air. It was oddly soothing, like crickets in the evening. By mid-morning, the tropical sun grew strong and bright reflections danced on the waves. The daily monotony could be deceiving. Danger lurked in many forms. We were ever aware of the life-threatening storms that could blow in without warning, or the possibility of crossing paths with a hostile Navy frigate. Rival pirate crews, too, sometimes prowled these waters. While the brotherhood of pirates was a concept we cherished, not all followed it. Some unscrupulous raiders would as soon rob us as a merchant if desperate. Thus, a part of our routine was vigilance. The lookout high on the mast stayed keen-eyed, scanning every smudge on the horizon. We all learned to identify ships by silhouette and sail arrangement long before they got close. A broad-beamed galleon, heavily laden, would send ripples of excitement through the crew. Conversely, lean, angular warships flying a European flag would have us whispering nervously and preparing to alter course out of sight. Yet most days, there was nothing at all on the horizon but sky and sea. Those were peaceful days, almost lazy in their tempo. We'd sometimes joke that we were more sailors than pirates on such days, since we spent our time much like any merchant crew, steering by the wind, keeping the ship in trim, and awaiting whatever may come. Survival was often the main goal, as we moved from port to port in search of our next treasure to plunder. One of the crew put it succinctly: piracy is mostly patience, punctuated by moments of terror. We chuckled at the truth in that. Our democracy on board also meant that each man had a say in our course and plans. If the sailing was smooth and a decision had to be made, say, whether to lurk near the windward passage for Spanish ships or to cruise toward the Yucatan, we held a council. Under the bright midday sun, the quartermaster would gather us on the main deck. The captain presented his suggestions, and then each man was free to voice his opinion within reason. We tried not to all shout at once. It amazed me at first to see every man, from veteran sea artist to young swab, have an equal vote in affairs of moment. We'd reach consensus by majority, and the decision would be noted by Quartermaster Jones. There was order and fairness in this that I had never witnessed in the Navy. On a king's ship, I'd seen officers make foolish choices that led to suffering, and no common sailor could object without risking the cat-o' 9 tails. Here, If a plan seemed too risky or unprofitable, voices would be raised and our course corrected by our own collective wisdom. That communal aspect of daily life was perhaps our greatest strength, keeping resentment low and morale high. Though free from many tyrannies, daily life wasn't easy. The work was physically demanding under the blazing sun. Come afternoon, after we had our midday meal, often cold salt, beef and hardtack, fatigue would set in. We had no luxury of siestas, but the watch system allowed some rotation of rest. Usually, half the crew was on duty, while the others could steal an hour or two of sleep or leisure. Those off duty might lounge in whatever shade they could find, perhaps under an awning near the bow, or below in the relative cool of the hold. Some took the time to mend their clothes. Patched breeches and sun-bleached shirts were the fashion among us. Out of necessity, I often sat against a coil of rope, sewing up a tier, or retying the frayed ends of my woven belt, all the while humming a sea tune under my breath. Hygiene was basic and not often a priority. On calm days, a few of us would strip to the waist and pour buckets of seawater over ourselves to rinse off sweat and grime. It wasn't exactly a shower, but it refreshed. Sometimes, if a gentle rain arrived, you'd see the whole crew laugh and stand with faces upturned, letting fresh water cleanse salt-crusted skin. Privacy was non-existent when nature called. We used a simple head at the bow, basically a plank with a hole, open to the sea below. Only Captain Avery had the privilege of a chamber pot, which was dutifully emptied overboard by a cabin boy each morning. It sounds crude, but living so closely together, one becomes indifferent to such matters. We were, after all, rough men, living rough lives. One chore that rotated among us was pumping the bilge. Our ship, like all wooden vessels, constantly seeped a little water through its seams. Down in the hold was a foot-operated pump that we'd man for an hour or so each day to eject the stagnant water collecting below. I can still recall the musky, tar-laced smell of the bilges and the dank humidity down there. It was unpleasant work, but vital. Neglecting it could literally sink us slowly. We often did the pumping at dusk when the heat wasn't so oppressive. Two men would stomp the pump while singing a gentle shanty to pass time. Hearing the slosh of dirty water flowing out the scuppers was oddly satisfying, a reminder we were keeping our girl afloat and healthy. Each dusk we also observed a small ritual of sorts, prayers or a moment of silence. Despite being outlaws, many of my shipmates were religious in their own personal way. The influence of upbringing lingered. Some crews had formal Sunday services, but on ours it was informal. Often around sunset, a few God-fearing fellows would gather at the stern and say a quiet Our Father or sing a soft hymn. There was no obligation to join, but most of us paused out of respect. I often stood near, head bowed, thinking of my own soul and loved ones lost. This gentle piety may surprise those who think pirates irredeemably wicked, but indeed, in line with the religiosity of our times, pirates were somewhat pious. Our ship's musicians even rested on the Sabbath by the code. We believed in fortune and omens, but many also believed in divine justice beyond the horizon of life. After dusk, the crew not on night watch settled in for sleep or quiet pastimes. Our code mandated that lights and candles be put out at 8 o'clock to prevent accidental fires and to keep order. Those who wished to continue any merriment had to do so above deck in the open air, so their mates could rest. This rule proved wise. It curbed all-night drinking and allowed everyone some sleep before their next watch. Thus, Our evenings were surprisingly subdued. Below decks, in the dim glow of a single hanging lantern, men reclined in hammocks or on bedrolls. Some murmured in low conversation, perhaps two old friends, sharing a story along the hold's center aisle. Others rolled tobacco if available, and the sweet pungence of pipe smoke would curl lazily in the thick air. The sounds were of gentle snoring, hammock ropes creaking, and the incessant lullaby of waves against the hull. In this routine, swabbing decks, trimming sails, watching horizons, maintaining weapons, days blended together. Yet we did not chafe under it as we might under a Navy boatswain's incessant orders. We kept each other accountable out of mutual benefit. There was pride in our orderly ship. As one captive turned, crewmen later recounted, pirate ships could exhibit a great deal of order, better even than on ships of the Dutch East India Company. We took a good deal of pride in doing things right, he observed, noting that our work ethic put some merchant crews to shame. I found that true on the Twilight Fortune. We all understood that our lives depended on our ship's seaworthiness and on each other. No king's pay sustained us. Our reward would come only if we functioned well as a unit to capture prizes. So each chore was done with care, whether it was mending a frayed sail or rationing out water. Water, how precious it became after weeks at sea. We had filled our casks in Port Royal, but inevitably the fresh water turned brackish and green with algae in the barrels. We used what remained of the decent water for cooking when we could, for drinking rum or beer was often easier to come by than truly clean water. Each day around noon, the quartermaster issued our ration of liquid. Some days it was a quart of small beer, other days a cup of straight rum cut with a bit of that stale water to make grog. Under the sun, sweat rolling off our brows, that nip of grog was a small mercy. It was sweetened with a pinch of cinnamon or cane sugar if we had any. To mask the stagnant tang of the water, we savoured it in silence or with a toast to our health. On days we had the luck of rain, we'd scurry out every bowl and bucket to catch the fresh drops, singing and laughing as the heavens refilled our supply with sweet water. Food, too, was a constant preoccupation. Each dawn, the cook checked our stores, barrels of salted beef and pork, hard as wood and heavily salted to preserve it, sacks of dried peas and flour, maybe some rice or cornmeal. We had hardtack biscuits in abundance, a staple, but hardly a treat. Hardtack was a dry, rock-hard biscuit that stayed edible for long voyages, though often infested with weevils. Many a mealtime I spent tapping my biscuit on the table to knock out the little worms, then soaking it in broth or ale to soften it enough to chew. It was either that or go hungry, and one quickly loses squeamishness about a few extra protein wrigglers in one's diet. We joked it was just meat seasoning. Some days, especially early in the voyage, we ate better. After leaving Port Royal, we had a small stock of plantains, yams, and salted fish purchased from local markets. Those were consumed quickly, a welcome break from monotony. If we were fortunate to land an opportunistic catch a sea turtle sleeping on the surface, for instance, we rejoiced. Turtle was a prized source of fresh meat. Once, near the Cayman Islands, we netted a hefty green turtle and kept it alive in a makeshift pen on deck, a practice common among sailors. Over the next week, we butchered it gradually for stew. Turtle flesh is rich and beef-like, and it buoyed our strength immeasurably to have that fresh fare. I'll never forget that savoury turtle soup, seasoned with wild thyme and a bit of salt pork for flavour. When prey was scarce and supplies ran low, hunger gnawed at our bellies. Those were testy times. The crew grew quiet and brooding, eyeing the horizon desperately for any sail that might hold provisions. In extreme cases, pirates became creative or bold. We knew of legendary buccaneers who pillaged coastal settlements for cattle just to feed their crews. The names of l'Olonais, Morgan, and Tocard were spoken in such tales, men who demanded cattle as ransom or raided farms to slaughter cows for meat. We hadn't reached such dire straits on the Twilight Fortune, but it gave us cold comfort that if needed, we could prioritize filling our stew pot over chests with gold. Indeed, sometimes food and drink were as much treasure to us as coins or jewels. I recall one small prize we took, an off Cuba, a Spanish coastal trader. Upon boarding, we found her hold half full of molasses, barrels of flour, and 100 bottles of wine bound for some colonial governor's table. Not a piece of gold on board, yet our crew whooped in triumph. That night, we feasted like kings on stolen bread and wine, and toasted to the irony that these humble supplies meant more for our survival than any doubloon. Despite the hardships, there was contentment in our routine. Each completed task, each sunrise and sunset safely passed, knit us tighter as a crew. We formed habits that felt as natural as breathing. In the afternoons, when duties were lighter, men would whittle little trinkets from spare wood, or sew flag patches onto their jackets for flair. A couple of my mates were literate and shared a treasured book of sea tales, reading aloud a few pages to an eager small circle. Listening to those yarns on a breezy afternoon, I could see men's eyes drift to the horizon, imagining distant adventures even as we lived one. As the sun set on a typical day, painting the sky in brilliant orange and purple, we again gathered to adjust sails for the evening wind, tidy up ropes, and ensure all was snug for night. The air cooled mercifully. The routine gave a sense of security, the knowledge that our ship was in good order and all was well for now. On the horizon, if no ship appeared by dusk, we figured none would until morning, so we allowed ourselves a bit of ease. Perhaps Kofi would serve an extra ladle of hot salmagundi stew if it was available, a concoction of every odd scrap of meat and vegetable we had, heavily spiced to make it palatable. I recall stirring the communal pot and seeing bits of salted pork, fish, maybe a pigeon, or wild duck from our last island stop, all swimming with cabbage, onion, and anything else we could toss in. The aroma would be surprisingly rich and tempting after a hungry day. The concept of salmagundi fascinated me. It embodied the pirate spirit of improvisation. As we hungrily devoured that peppery stew from wooden bowls, someone might quip that we were eating finer than any governor that night. Indeed, many a pirate crew's favorite dish was salmagundi, a stew of odds and ends, turtle meat, fish, and whatever could be found, all seasoned intensely. We seasoned ours with garlic, hot peppers, and the mustard seeds we kept in a keg. Even if the base ingredients were coarse, the result could make a man's tongue dance with flavor. Stomachs full and bodies tired, we would post the night watch. Usually 4 men rotated through the dark hours, and the rest of us turned in. Day after day like this might sound tedious, but I assure you, after a youth of harsh servitude, those days of relative peace felt like heaven. I cherished the simplicity, the reality that daily life aboard our pirate ship was harsh but straightforward. Each sunrise I was grateful simply to be free and under the sky, working among comrades I trusted. Of course, not every day was so uneventful. We all itched for the prize days, when a sail would appear and break the routine with excitement and danger. But I will recount those in time. What I want to convey is that the lifeblood of piracy was not constant raid and riot. It was this steady, if rugged, march of days that bound us together and kept our ship sailing. The quiet heroism of men scrubbing planks, stitching canvas, rationing biscuits. This was the foundation that made any glorious adventures possible. And when one lives at sea, one comes to appreciate the small things in the daily grind. The sudden splash of dolphins at the bow on a slow afternoon would lift a dozen spirits at once. The crackle of fish frying, a rare treat when we caught some, could inspire near reverence. The sharing of a single orange prized citrus to ward off scurvy was an act of brotherhood. I remember once when our water was particularly low and foul, the quartermaster allowed us each a tot of precious brandy from a prize bottle to mix with it. That night, swaying in my hammock, listening to the creak of timbers and the distant snore of a comrade, I felt deeply content. The stars glimmered through the open hatch above, and I thought, this is my life. Now, hard, yes. Uncertain, yes. But mine to live. A man could do a lot worse than swabbing decks under the sun and sleeping with the sound of the waves beneath him. In such fashion did our daily routine carry us across the sea, one hard-earned mile at a time, waiting for fate to place opportunity in our path. We were, in those routine moments, not so different from honest sailors, but the crucial difference was that we worked for ourselves and each other, not for a distant king or profit-hungry merchant. That lent even the dullest chore a sense of purpose and pride. We ran our ship as our own small republic, bound by duty to one another. And so every cleaned musket, every stitch in the mainsail, every careful lookout's gaze on the horizon was an act of investment in our shared dream of fortune and freedom. Little did I know during those placid days how I would later yearn for their simplicity when events grew more intense. But for now, the steady rhythm of pirate life set the stage for all that was to come, tempering us like steel in a forge, day by day, beneath the sun and stars, pirate brotherhood and the code. Under the warm Caribbean sun, on the gently rolling deck of the Twilight Fortune, I truly discovered the meaning of brotherhood. It wasn't just a word we tossed around lightly. It was the very bond that held our precarious lives together. We pirates were a mixed lot. English, Dutch, French, African, Creole men, of different tongues and temperaments. Yet we became brethren, sworn to a common cause and code. In those early weeks at sea, the code of our ship was hammered into my heart as firmly as any nail into a plank, and with it came a profound sense of equality and fraternity unknown in the outside world. Our ship's articles, often simply called the Code, had been drawn up in Port Royal before I joined, but as was custom, when a new hand like me came aboard, the quartermaster would gather all and have the articles read aloud and signed afresh as a sort of public ceremony. I recall that day clearly. The sun was bright and the wind mild. We assembled on the main deck, the four crew forming a rough semicircle around Quartermaster Jones, who held the parchment. It was a plain document, perhaps once the back of a merchant's ledger page, now scrawled with our rules in bold ink. Captain Avery stood behind Jones with arms crossed, solemn. Though we were an egalitarian bunch, such meetings carried weight. This was akin to establishing our constitution. One by one, the quartermaster read each article in a loud, steady voice, while we listened intently. The first article declared that every man shall have an equal vote in affairs of moment, and an equal title to the fresh provisions or strong liquors seized, to use at pleasure, unless scarcity makes it necessary to vote retrenchment. I remember nodding along with many others at that. This was the bedrock of fairness. When big decisions arose, each of us, from captain to cook, had one vote, and whatever food or drink we captured, all could partake fairly, except when we had to ration. It struck me how such simple rules set us far apart from the wider world's injustices. On a navy ship, officers dined on fine meats, while common tars gnawed hardtack. Here, we all ate from the same pot and drank from the same cask, unless dire need demanded otherwise. The second article Jones recited dealt with discipline and theft. If any man defrauded the company of valuables, coins, jewels, etc., beyond a small sum, marooning would be his punishment. A shiver went through me at that, imagining the grim fate, to be left on a deserted shore with maybe a bottle of water and pistol, essentially a death sentence of isolation. And if theft was between crew members of something minor, the code described a lesser but brutal punishment of slitting the offender's nose and ears before leaving him somewhere inhabited to face shame and hardship. I noticed a few men unconsciously touch their noses or ears at the mention, and a hush fell. This was serious. Stealing from each other was the ultimate betrayal. Life at sea was hard enough without looking over one's shoulder for a thieving shipmate. Our code made clear such treachery would not be tolerated. Next, the no gambling rule. No person to game at cards or dice for money. A couple of the more roguish fellows visibly sighed at that, but no one voiced dissent. Gambling bred quarrels and cheating, which could escalate dangerously in the confines of a ship. So we saved our wagering for friendly boasts about our shooting aim or races up the rigging, not games of chance that might empty a man's pockets unfairly. Then came the article about curfews. Lights and candles to be put out at 8 o'clock at night. If any crew still remained inclined for drinking, they were to do it on the open deck. I had already seen this in practice. It ensured quiet and safety below decks during sleeping hours, as well as preventing accidental fires from a knocked-over lantern. It also curbed all-night carousing in cramped quarters. This rule demonstrated how our brotherhood prized respect for each other's rest. A few of the more boisterous lads grinned, likely recalling times they had been shooed up on deck to continue a late-night song under the stars rather than in the bunks. The code continued. Keep weapons ready. Each man must maintain his pistol, cutlass, and musket in prime condition, which we diligently did every morning. Then a critical and somewhat unusual article. No women or boys allowed among us. It stated that if any man were to smuggle a woman disguised as a man aboard, he would suffer death. This one caused a bit of murmuring. We all knew the reason. Women aboard could sow discord and jealousy, and many sailors believed women on ships brought bad luck besides. A disguised woman incident had nearly sunk another crew due to the infighting it caused, according to an old salt's tale. While I found the severity extreme, I understood the necessity to keep our floating commune free of certain entanglements. In truth, a few women did sail as pirates themselves, like the infamous Mary Read and Anne Bonny, but they were rare and had to prove themselves the equal of any man. None were among us at the time. The next articles addressed combat and cowardice. Deserting the ship or failing to fight in battle was punishable by death or marooning. This drew no complaints. Each man relied on the courage of the next when grappling with an enemy. We all had to agree that if one of us turned tail in the heat of action, leaving his brothers to die, he deserved no less than abandonment. It was a harsh creed, but fairness often is harsh. Fortunately, I never saw this rule tested on our ship, No one shirked when sabres clashed or muskets fired, for in the fury of boarding, survival demanded all hands and all hearts. Another article forbade fighting each other on board. Any quarrels among crew were to be settled ashore with swords or pistols, gentlemanlike, under the oversight of the quartermaster. This, too, was wise. Tensions inevitably flared living in close quarters, but spilling blood on our own decks would only weaken us and risk damage to the ship or injuries that left us short-handed. If two men's anger got too hot, we'd mark the issue and let them duel on the next beach we careened at, fair and square. Interestingly, I saw far fewer fights among us pirates than I'd witnessed among pressed Navy sailors who had no outlet for their grievances. Perhaps knowing you'll face a pistol at dawn on an island if you truly want to fight makes men consider if the quarrel is worth dying for. Most scuffles cooled down long before reaching that extreme. One heartening rule in the code was the provision for injuries and recompense. It declared that no man could propose to break up our way of living. That is to say, dissolve the company until each had earned £1,000. And if any man were to lose a limb or become crippled in service, he'd receive $800 from the common stock for a lost limb, or proportional amounts for lesser hurts. I remember the pride that swelled in my chest at hearing that. What kingdom or navy provided guaranteed insurance to its men? None that I knew. But here, we pirates pledged to care for our own. If a cannonball took a fellow's leg, he wouldn't be cast aside penniless. We'd compensate him so he could live comfortably, as much as possible, ashore. It made us fight all the harder, knowing our brothers would not abandon us in misfortune. Finally came the matter of shares of plunder. This was always of keen interest. Our code stated, the captain and quartermaster each received 2 shares of every prize. The master, sailing master, boatswain, and gunner got 1 1/2 shares. Other officers slightly more than a single share, and every other crewman 1 share apiece. This slight inequality in shares acknowledged greater responsibilities, but was far cry from the vast disparities on merchant or naval. Ships where captains and owners took lion's shares, and common sailors mere crumbs. Under our system, even the lowliest deckhand had a meaningful stake in each success. As a new recruit, I found it quite generous. My 1 share was infinitely more than I'd ever received in honest employ. But it also impressed on me that the quartermaster and captain truly earned their double portions by guiding us and taking on risk and leadership. The final note in the article reading was almost charming. The musicians were granted rest on the Sabbath day, but the other 6 days and nights, none without special favor. This drew laughter and cheers, and our fiddler made a mocking little bow. It showed that even in our hardened trade, we valued our small pleasures and allowed a bit of humanity. Our fiddler and occasional drummer would not be forced to play on Sunday. He could lay aside his instrument and be just another crewman for the day. Other pirates in the 17th century were known to actually observe Sunday with minimal work and even prayer, ironically aligning with mainstream piety despite being outlaws. On our ship, Sunday might see a double portion of rum for dinner or a rare day of rest if weather permitted. When Quartermaster Jones finished reading the articles, he asked each man in turn if he agreed and would sign or make his mark. Signing was more symbolic, as a good number of the crew were illiterate and simply drew an X or their unique personal scratch. The quartermaster kept the original documents safe in his chest as a reference in case of disputes. One by one, each of us stepped forward. I took the quill when my turn came, hands a bit sweaty, and sign my name as evenly as I could. Jack Tar. Not my birth name, but the nickname everyone used, fittingly generic for a sailor. Many pirates used aliases to protect family or simply for a fresh start. With that stroke of ink, I felt fully initiated. I was not just a stray sailor on a ship. I was a member of a self-ruled company with a social contract binding us. Now, this code was not merely words on paper. It lived daily among us. Honor among thieves. Some call it with a sneer. But it was more profound. We had created a micro-society striving for order and fairness, exceeding that on many lawful vessels. I had seen merchant crews where officers embezzled cargo or favored cronies, and sailors stole from each other out of desperation. By contrast, on our ship, pirates very rarely stole from each other. Decisions were communal and discipline communal as well. We each had an investment in justice being upheld, because it could as easily be applied to ourselves the next day. There was a strong sense of pride and mutual respect that flowed from the code. If two shipmates fell into an argument, often another would remind them, "Save it for shore, mates. We're brothers on this deck." And more often than not, the quarrel would cool before that shore ever arrived. We truly became, like brethren, by shared hardship and shared values. When a man was ill with fever, we pooled our resources to nurse him, rotating who stayed up with him at night. When another man, George, lost 2 fingers in a gunpowder accident during target practice, we formally logged his right to compensation from next prize, though our surgeon cauterized and saved him, and he adapted quickly to knot tying with 3 digits. The process of awarding him a bit of coin from the next loot was done openly, with applause of support. That moment drove home. We took care of our own. Our quartermaster, akin to a chief officer, was particularly central to maintaining brotherhood. It was said the quartermaster was the crew's representative and guardian of fairness. Quartermaster Jones handled distribution of rations and loot, resolved minor disputes, and had authority almost equal to the captain in practical matters. He was the one who would physically punish offenders, with the crew's consent, execute the ugly tasks, like marooning if ever needed. The captain led in battle and navigation, but the quartermaster led in justice. Knowing that one of our own, not some distant admiral, held the scales of punishment gave us comfort. The quartermaster could also be deposed by vote if he lost the crew's trust, which kept him honest. In fact, the captain himself served at the crew's pleasure. We had chosen Avery for his skill and success, but if he'd gone against our code flagrantly or led us to repeated disaster, we had the right to depose him through a vote. That democratic underpinning meant that our leaders led by example and respect, not brute authority. I remember an incident that tested this. One crewman claimed he'd seen Captain Avery taking a finer piece of china for himself alone before the loot was divided, a serious accusation of cheating us. Whispers ran rampant one evening about it. But instead of suppressing dissent, Quartermaster Jones convened a meeting. The accuser, a sailor named Briggs, nervously laid out what he thought he saw. The captain calmly produced the item in question, a painted porcelain teacup of obvious Spanish make, and explained he had taken it after the equal division, because no one else wanted the delicate thing, most preferring coins or useful goods. However, to keep faith, he offered it up to be auctioned among us, if any fancied it, or else to be sold, and coin added to common treasury. In the end, none of us particularly wanted a teacup, and we believed his account. But I could tell Captain Avery felt stung that his integrity was doubted even briefly. The very next prize we took, he went out of his way to ensure the quartermaster and 2 witnesses catalogued every trinket before any distribution to silence any future suspicion. That transparency shored up our trust again. It struck me that no king's captain would bother to defend his honor before common crew. He'd likely flog the accuser for insolence. But here, our captain answered to us as much as we to him. This mutual accountability was the secret to our remarkable order. Even an outside observer would have marveled. Pirates were more orderly, democratic, and disciplined than many merchant or navy ships, as some have noted. Indeed, a learned fellow might call our ship a floating republic. We had no tribunal except ourselves, and it worked. Let me paint a picture of a typical scene that exemplified our brotherhood. One hot afternoon, a squall had just passed, leaving the deck steamy and rigging dripping. A Spanish bark had given us a hard chase the day before, but escaped, leaving the men somewhat irritable. 2 of our crew, Tom and Jean, got into a spat over a misplaced whetstone. It started innocently. Jean accused Tom of borrowing and losing his sharpening stone. Tom denied it. Voices rose. Others began to crowd around, eager to mediate or possibly egg them on. In a flash, Jean shoved Tom, and Tom, who was younger and fiercer, reached for his dagger in anger. There was a collective intake of breath. Tempers flared like that could turn bloody. But before it went further, 2 big comrades, Bill and Joseph, stepped in and physically separated them, each holding one man by the arms. Quartermaster Jones arrived at the commotion. In a firm voice, he reminded them of the code. No fighting on board, settle it properly or not at all. Both men were red-faced and panting, but hearing the code aloud acted like a splash of cold water. Tom spat over the side to vent his rage. Jean, still seething, demanded satisfaction on shore if Tom would not confess to losing the stone. Tom, pride wounded, agreed to duel next time we careened for supplies. It could have ended there, with a future duel set. But something telling happened that night. As we cooled off with our evening ration, I saw Tom approach Jean quietly on the foredeck. Thinking they might come to blows again, I drifted closer in case help was needed. Instead, I overheard Tom murmur an apology. He had found the whetstone in question. It had slipped under a coil of rope where he'd left it earlier. He admitted his mistake and offered Jean a small gift as amends, a bit of tobacco from his own pouch. Precious stuff out here. Jean, for his part, looked abashed for having shoved Tom. In the end, they clasped forearms in forgiveness. No duel necessary after all. By the time Jones asked them next morning on the plan for their fight, they informed him it was settled peacefully. A few of us who'd watched the reconciliation smiled knowingly. This was the brotherhood at work. The code prevented impulsive violence, giving space for tempers to cool and honor to be maintained without blood. We teased them a bit afterwards. We were looking forward to seeing which of you is the better swordsman. But truthfully, everyone was relieved. Losing one or both in a duel would only have weakened us needlessly. Through the code's guidance, we remained whole. Trust was the most precious coin among us. As we sailed and sought prizes, our lives often hung on trusting each man to play his part. I realized that trust was not bestowed lightly. It was earned by adhering to our principles day in and day out. When a shipmate resisted pocketing an extra jewel for himself, or stayed at his gun in battle though wounded, or even just reliably took his turn at the dull midnight watch without complaint, these built trust. In taverns ashore, pirates from different crews could brawl or deceive each other, but aboard our own ship, we were exceedingly honest with one another. This honesty extended to sharing information as well. If someone had a grievance or suggestion, he could speak at the evening gathering. Often discussions about where to sail next were lively, with debate resembling a council in some town hall rather than a rabble of cutthroats. I recall debating whether to risk the Mona Passage between Hispaniola and Puerto Rico, where Spanish patrols increased. Some advocated going anyway for rich traffic. Others urged caution and proposed the Windward Passage near Cuba instead. We took a vote. Caution won by a small margin. The losing side grumbled, but accepted it because they had their say, and the majority ruled. How different from a naval ship, where an admiral's whim could take you into folly with no voice from the deck. This practice of voting on important decisions communally was something we held dear. It wasn't needed for every trivial matter, but for strategy and big risks. It was our way. Now, there were times discipline had to be enforced under the code, though thankfully not too often on our vessel. The worst I saw was when a crewman named Roper was caught stealing rum from the communal stores one night. Over weeks, we had noted liquor missing beyond our regular allotment. A trap was set by the quartermaster, and sure enough, Roper was found siphoning extra rum rations in the wee hours. This was theft from all of us, and a breach of trust. It pained us because Roper was generally liked, if a bit too fond of drink, thus his temptation. A ship's council was convened by lantern light. Roper hung his head in shame as the evidence was laid out. According to our code, the prescribed penalty for theft among crew could be marooning or mutilation. Neither was palatable. We had no desire to maroon a friend over a few bottles of rum, nor to maim him. The captain and quartermaster conferred privately, then consulted us. In the end, given the relative smallness of the crime and Roper's remorse, we settled on a lesser punishment by our interpretation of the code's spirit. Roper would receive 12 lashes across the back, administered by Jones in front of the crew, and be put on half share of the next prize as further penalty. Additionally, he was banned from any rum for a month. Roper accepted this verdict without protest, tears in his eyes, not from the future pain, but from the guilt of having wronged his brethren. The flogging was done the next dawn at the mast. We watched silently, each lash a crack in the morning air, matched by Roper's stifled grunt. It was over quickly, and we released him to nurse his wounds with salve. From that day on, Roper became teetotal and one of the most diligent men aboard, seeking to regain respect. No rum went missing again. Such was justice among us, severe but measured, aiming to correct, not simply to punish. We all understood if the theft had been gold or a serious sabotage, marooning might well have been carried out. The code's threat loomed, but mercy had a place too when appropriate. Through trials like these, our brotherhood strengthened. Each man knew where he stood and what to expect of others. Freed from tyranny, we ironically imposed upon ourselves a code of conduct stricter in some ways than any Navy's articles. But we obeyed it willingly because it was our code. As one scholar later remarked, pirates had codes of honor, legal systems, and took pride in good work. Living it firsthand, I found that statement true. At night, sometimes I lay awake in my hammock listening to the breathing of my comrades in the dark hold. In those moments of quiet, I would think about how extraordinary our little society was. We were outcasts and criminals in the eyes of the world, yet we had forged a fraternity built on shared values of equality and justice. To be sure, we were no saints. We could be as ruthless as any when it came to taking a prize. But among ourselves, we had found a better way of life than the one we had fled. We didn't always articulate it in fancy terms, but a deep current of solidarity ran among us. We addressed each other as brother or mate without irony. When a man was in pain, we helped him. When a man succeeded, we cheered him. One starry evening, after a successful raid that we'll tell later, the captain broke out a special bottle of brandy and shared it round. As we stood under the sails, the captain raised his tin cup in a toast. To the brethren of the twilight fortune long, may we sail together, bound by trust and code, and may fortune favour the bold. We all raised a cheer, clinking our dented cups. I caught Quartermaster Jones's eye and saw a rare glimmer of moisture there. The moment was pure camaraderie. Under the gentle sway of the ship, with warm spirits in our bellies, and the knowledge that each man here would fight and, if need be, die for the others, I felt an overwhelming kinship. No honour among thieves, perhaps not among petty thieves, but we were something different. We were brothers of the coast, bound not by blood, but by choice. To this day, I believe that code and brotherhood were the heart of the Golden Age pirates' success. Fearsome reputations and cutlasses may have won the battles, but it was our unity and shared purpose that won the days in between, kept us from fracturing, and made the enterprise worthwhile. We had found, in our outlawry, a kind of freedom and fraternity many men living under kings could only dream of. And as I hung that night in my canvas sling, listening to a nearby shipmate softly strumming a few strings on a guitar with the captain's permission, despite the late hour because it was a gentle lullaby tune, I felt profoundly grateful. Grateful that fate had led me to these decks and these men, away from the lash of tyrants and into a circle of true companions who had my back as I had theirs. Thus was the pirate brotherhood, as real and binding as any family, forged by articles of agreement but sustained by mutual respect and care. In the grand theatre of history, our black flags and fierce deeds draw the eye. But behind the curtain, it was this quiet fellowship that truly defined what it meant to live as a pirate during the Golden Age. Food, drink, and song at sea. As twilight falls over the ocean, a balmy breeze carries the savoury scent of supper across the main deck. The sea is calm tonight, waves lapping gently against our wooden hull in a soothing rhythm. Lanterns sway from the beams, casting a warm golden glow on the faces of hungry crewmen gathered around the galley. In this serene hour, the Twilight Fortune becomes more than a pirate ship. It is our floating home, and we come together to share its simple comforts. Food and drink, though often plain and hard-won, bring moments of contentment. And after the day's work, when bellies are fed and the sky darkens to velvet, music and song drift softly from below deck, a balm for our souls and a celebration of our fellowship. Our evening meal usually begins with the ring of a spoon on the cook's kettle, a bright ting-ting that is music to a sailor's ear. The cook, old Kofi, stands by his cauldron at the brick stove, built on a bed of sand to prevent fire near the foremast. Grubs on, boys, comes the call, and we gather eagerly, wooden bowls in hand. Tonight, we are fortunate. The pot contains a stew richer than our usual fare. We see chunks of fish, some pieces of salt pork, and even strands of tropical greens bobbing in a hearty broth. A prize sloop we captured 2 days ago yielded a trove of provisions, smoked fish, yams, and coconuts among them. Thus, this stew is flavoured with ingredients beyond the standard salt meat and dried pea combo. Kofi ladles it out generously, and each man receives a piece of ship's biscuit to go with it. We eat sitting wherever we find space, cross-legged on deck, perched on coils of rope, or leaning against a warm bulkhead. Some remove their broad hats to let the evening breeze cool their sweaty heads. As I sip the broth, the taste of garlic and pepper surprises me, drawing a blissful sigh. Kofi must have found some seasoning in our stores. Bless him. The fish is tender and the yam soft, absorbing the spiced broth. For a moment, there is near silence, except for contented slurps and the clink of spoons on bowl rims. Out at sea, one learns to savor every bite of a good meal, for you never know when the next truly fresh one will come. Our diet, truth be told, is normally monotonous and often unpleasant. When fresh food runs out, we rely on salted meats and hardtack. Barrels of salt beef or pork sit in the hold, great hunks preserved in brine. After weeks in the barrel, the meat is tough and extremely salty. We usually soak or boil it to remove some salt before eating, but even then it's chewy as leather. The hardtack biscuits are equally notorious. Flour and water baked into a nearly indestructible cracker. They can last years without spoiling, which is both blessing and curse. Often they are so hard we joke you could scuttle the ship by firing them from the cannons. To eat hardtack, we soften it in soup or coffee when we have coffee, or even beer. And as always, one must check for Weevil's hardtack is frequently infested with little beetle grubs. Most of us just flick them out or, if feeling indifferent, chew them up for added protein. After all, it's said more than one pirate owed his life to the extra nutrition from biscuit worms during lean times. If anything, weevils are a sign the bread's still edible and not completely petrified. But tonight's stew needs no such grim humor. It is genuinely tasty. A chorus of compliments goes to Kofi. Fine stew, old man. You've outdone yourself. He merely grins, revealing missing teeth, and urges us to save room for a second ladle if we can. He's been stingy earlier in the voyage, just so we might have this feast with the fresh goods from our raid. In this way, our cook is like a quartermaster of the belly, ensuring scarce provisions are voted for retrenchment, rationing when necessary, and indulging us with a hearty spread when fortune allows. Alongside the meal, we have our drink. Tonight, it is grog, made from our water and rum stores. The water in our casks has turned a bit green and slimy with algae over the weeks, not appealing to the tongue. However, a good splash of dark Jamaican rum, some sugar if available, and a scrape of nutmeg or a squeeze of citrus, we were lucky to have a few limes from the prize ship, transforms it. The grog is served in tin cups, and we raise them in a short toast. To sweet victuals and sweet victory, someone quips, and we all drink deeply. The grog is smooth, the rum cutting through the stagnant tang of the water. Indeed, liquor is easier to preserve at sea than clean drinking water. The alcohol ensures no spoilage and even kills some of the foulness in our barrels. Over time, we've learned to cherish these concoctions. A pinch of cinnamon and a bit of lime in grog not only mask the taste of algae, but also lift the spirit immeasurably. I recall how one learned article said rum and spices were used to sweeten stagnant water living. Through it, I wholeheartedly agree. Without grog or beer, plain water on long voyages would be nearly undrinkable and dangerous to health. As we eat and drink, conversation comes alive. One man regales a couple of others with the tale of how we procured tonight's fish. Apparently, a flying fish had leapt aboard during last night's darkness and smacked straight into his sleeping face, to much startled cursing. Its fate was the pot. Laughter ripples across the deck at this image. Another group chats about various recipes they've encountered in their sailing days. One describes a turtle stew a Cuban villager once made, with coconut milk and chilies. Another swears by Hoppin' John, a simple dish of rice and beans he had among buccaneers. Talking of food is a favorite pastime when actually eating it. It seems to double the pleasure. We trade knowledge of how best to prepare tough salt beef, soaking overnight in seawater, ironically can draw out excess brine and soften it, and how to bake a decent ash cake from flour on a flat iron over coals. Someone inevitably brings up salmagundi, the legendary pirate dish. Salmagundi is less a fixed recipe and more a catch-all, a stew of whatever meats and vegetables available, all heavily seasoned. We note that tonight's stew is a fine example, lacking only the more exotic pickled items. In port, some of us have enjoyed versions of salmagundi containing chopped eggs, pickled herring, mango, and so on, akin to the lists we've heard of. One pirate in our crew, who once sailed with the infamous Bartholomew Roberts, Black Bart, solemnly recounts how it said Captain Roberts was eating salmagundi when the Royal Navy caught up to him in battle. "If I ever go, lads," he jokes, "I hope it's with me, spoon in me hand and belly full of salmagundi." We cheer at that, humour masking the dark reality that any day could indeed be our last. But tonight is for living, not worrying. As wooden bowls are licked clean and cups drained, a wave of contentment settles on the group. The sun has fully set by now, leaving a canopy of brilliant stars above. The Southern Cross twinkles just above the horizon to port, while the North Star lies low astern, our approximate guides in these waters. With daylight's chores done and hunger satisfied, the men turn naturally to leisure. In port, pirates might explode into drunken debauchery, spending coin on rum and revelry through the night. At sea, our revelry is gentler but no less heartfelt. We have our rum ration, our wit, and most precious of all, our music. From below, the faint strains of a fiddle being tuned float up. Our designated fiddler, a wiry fellow named Fergus, often brings out his instrument at this time. On the open deck, a few of us not on watch gather around him. Others choose to remain below in the relative coolness and simply listen through the hatch. It's a measure of our discipline and courtesy per the code that rowdy entertainment stays topside after hours. Fergus tucks the fiddle under his chin and draws the bow softly across the strings, coaxing a mellow, lilting melody. It starts as a sea chanty tune. We recognize it as Lowlands Away, a slow ballad some of us used as a work song hauling ropes. But he plays it now, not in its call and response work cadence, but as a flowing air, sweet and melancholic. Conversations hush. A few men hum along quietly or tap feet in rhythm. Our ship's instruments are humble but cherished. Fergus's battered fiddle came from a French prize. He repaired it himself with glue and ingenuity. Another man, Solomon, fetches a penny whistle, tin flute from his pocket and joins in, harmonizing a high descant over the fiddle's voice. Below, I know Bill has a drum fashioned from an empty cask and goat hide, and he's likely tapping it softly to keep time. It wasn't all singing aboard ships. Many vessels carried fiddles, flutes, even banjos or bagpipes for entertainment. We, too, have a concertina, a kind of squeeze box, acquired recently. Jim, who learned to play in a Nassau tavern, squeezes out a few chords now, adding a rich undercurrent to the melody. The combination is enchanting. There is something profoundly comforting about music at sea. In the darkness, with the gentle pitch of the ship and the stars as our only witnesses, a simple tune can stir deep emotions. As I listen, My mind drifts to memories of home and distant loves. The fiddle's notes dance in the salt-tinged air, weaving through the creak of timbers and hush of waves. Perhaps on a merchantman or naval ship, the officers would frown on such informality, but here it is, our lifeblood. These moments of song knit us closer, remind us of our humanity beyond the label of pirate. Often the music will pick up into a shanty or jig after the initial slow air. Once the men have had a measure of contemplative peace, the desire for a bit of cheer rises. Sure enough, Fergus transitions seamlessly into a more lively reel. It's an Irish jig tune that sets toes tapping. A couple of our lads, still shirtless from the day's work, jump up and begin an impromptu dance, much to everyone's amusement. They link arms and attempt a clumsy reel, boots clomping on the planks. A ripple of laughter circles as they nearly collide with the capstan, but the laughter is warm, encouraging them to continue rather than mocking. One tall, lanky pirate kicks his legs absurdly high to make the short one keep pace, and we howl. Even the usually reserved quartermaster stands by with a broad grin at their antics. Clap! Clap! We add a hand clap to the beat. Some slap their thighs in rhythm. The percussion of human hands and a stray stomp or two on deck amplify the joy. It's moments like this one realizes that though society casts us as villains, we possess the same capacity for mirth and camaraderie as any group of men anywhere, possibly more. For having thrown off many formal restraints, we revel like children when we can. After a couple of fast tunes, the dancers collapse in a panting heap, and the rest of us applaud. The music winds down gently. It wouldn't do to get too boisterous and neglect. Caution, we still keep an ear out for any change in the ship's motion or a cry from the watch. The fiddler takes a long swig of water, or what passes for it, likely diluted rum, and switches to a ballad. This time, a rich baritone from the darkness joins in singing words. It's our sailmaker, singing Spanish Ladies, a farewell song popular among sailors. His voice carries steady and soulful over the quiet deck. We'll rant and we'll roar, like true British sailors. We'll rant and we'll roar across the salt seas. Many of us softly join the chorus, voices blending in the night. The song speaks of leaving beloved shores and hoping to return. It resonates deeply with hardened men who often hide sentiment beneath bravado. In song, we can express longing and homesickness without shame. I close my eyes and envision an old harbour I once knew, a girl on the dock waving a kerchief. For a moment, my throat tightens with emotion. I am not alone. Across from me, I notice Big Joseph discreetly wipe a tear from his eye as he sings the line "Sweethearts and Wives." The darkness and song together allow these hardened sea wolves to feel something tender. When the ballad ends, a respectful silence follows. Far above, the night watch calls out, "All's well," from his perch, a signal to break any eerie quiet and assure us he's awake. We answer with a friendly whoop. That call reminds us of duty some must turn in to be fresh for rotating watch. The fiddler yawns and begins stowing his precious instrument. One last tune is often played as a kind of lullaby tonight. It's the concertina alone, a slow, wheezy rendition of "Leave Her, Johnny." The gentle notes float through the lower deck as men sling into hammocks or spread blankets. It's a four-bitter, perhaps, a song for when sailors are off watch and relaxing. The lyrics lament the hard life at voyage's end and express eagerness to go ashore, but with a kind of affectionate grumbling. We don't actually sing the words aloud now. Most just hum or think on them as the music plays. It signals that the evening's revelry is done and it's time for quiet reflection. The tropical night is velvety and studded with fireflies, or perhaps bioluminescent plankton in the water, giving the illusion. A few men remain above, leaning on rails, finishing pipes of tobacco, and murmuring softly about plans or dreams. I overhear two debating what they'll do with their share of treasure. When this cruise is done, one wants to buy a little tavern in New Providence. The other fancies acquiring a farm in Carolina and retiring to grow tobacco. Idle dreams, perhaps, but comforting ones to discuss. Below, the air is thick with the mingled smells of salt, sweat, and tobacco smoke. The lantern is dimmed to near darkness per our rule. I hang my hammock not far from the hatch, where faint starlight beams in. Around me I hear the rustling of men settling in some whisper, a quiet good night, or trade a last joke. There's a sense of peace. For all our outlaw status, in these moments, we might as well be a crew of any honest ship, finding solace in routine pleasures. It strikes me that our greatest treasures were often food, drink, and merriment, just as much as gold and silver. After all, we frequently valued alcohol and provisions as treasure themselves. A cask of rum or a sack of flour excited cheers when found in a prize hold. We knew its true worth, life's simple joys. My stomach full and limbs relaxed, I reflect on how food tastes better and music sounds sweeter when you've earned it under the sun's toil, and when you share it with mates who'd risk their lives for you. Perhaps that is the secret richness of our way of living. We have all known hunger, thirst, and loneliness at sea. Thus, when we can eat, drink, and sing together, it nourishes more than our bodies. It feeds our souls with hope and camaraderie. On the hardest of voyages, I've seen a single shared joke over a hardtack biscuit or a brave tune hummed in a storm raise spirits tremendously. Up on deck, one of the lads has quietly begun strumming a guitar, a battered Spanish guitarra he picked up in a Cuban port. The soft guitar melody drifts down through the hatch, a gentle, repetitive arpeggio like a mother humming to a child. It's hypnotic and sleep conducive. I swing in my canvas bed, letting the notes lull me. Many pirates have an affection for music. It lightens the mood in cramped quarters and boosts morale. A few characters in adventure tales might play ferocious fiddles or pipes, but here our guitar is tender, almost paternal. As I hover on the edge of sleep, I consider the irony that these moments of harmony occur on a pirate ship, feared by merchants. They imagine us as devils incarnate, yet here we are, full-bellied, humming lullabies under the same stars that guide every sailor. The sea does not differentiate between pirate and navy man in granting these nightly reprieves. We all become children of the sea at bedtime. In the corner, I hear someone softly reciting what sounds like a prayer in Gaelic, likely Fergus, sending thanks or seeking blessing. Another is softly cursing as he shifts in his hammock, trying to get comfortable around a healing wound, until a friend whispers a bawdy joke to him and both snicker. Such small scenes warm my heart. I think of future nights, future feasts. Perhaps one day we'll have fresh bread again, how we all long for that. Or dried apples to stew into a pudding. We speak often of those in wistfulness. Will we get to revel in a tavern soon, with fiddles and drums and dancing girls? That lies ahead uncertain. But for now, our wooden world provides all we need. A strong ship, a fair share of rum, a hearty stew, and a song by lantern light. In this contented state, I am deeply aware that I wouldn't trade these companions or this life for the shallow comforts I once chased on land. The guitar's last chord fades gently, and all is quiet except the whisper of the ocean. I pull my hammock blanket up and close my eyes. Above, the sentries pace quietly, their footfalls a reassuring sign that while we rest, someone watches over us. The code even touches this. Those on night watch forego the drink to stay sharp, and we trust them implicitly. I can sleep knowing my brother above will spot any hazard before it reaches us. Tonight, like many nights, I drift off to the natural symphony of ship and sea, the rudder's soft knock, the waves' gentle swoosh, a halyard's light tap-tap against the mast. In my mind, these join with remembered notes of the fiddle and the taste of spiced grog lingering on my tongue, forming a lullaby unique to our life of liberty. I feel the ship rock me like a cradle. Contentment washes over me as sure as the tide. If paradise exists for a sailor, surely it feels like this moment. The last conscious thought I have is gratitude for the meal, for the music, for the camaraderie that turns rough pirate rogues into a family at day's end. The world might judge us criminals, but here, under the moonlight, sharing food and song, we have found a purer form of fellowship and joy than most will ever know. With that comforting realization, I surrender to sleep, while the Caribbean night keeps gentle watch over our well-fed, well-tuned souls. A midnight watch on deck. Midnight on the Caribbean Sea brings a profound stillness that is almost otherworldly. At this hour, the twilight fortune glides through dark waters under a canopy of brilliant stars. The moon has not yet risen, leaving the sky black and jeweled. The sea itself seems to sleep, with only a gentle swell causing the ship to sway in a slow, reassuring rhythm. In this quietude, the world narrows to the immediate present. The creak of wood, the whisper of wind in the rigging, and the keen eyes of those few souls entrusted with the midnight watch scanning the horizon. I step softly onto the deck, relieving one of my shipmates from his earlier watch. He gives me a brief nod, his face appearing ghostly in the starlight. "All's well," he murmurs, clapping my shoulder as he passes by to his hammock. I adjust my eyes to the darkness, without lanterns, for we keep them dimmed or extinguished to preserve night vision and avoid advertising our presence to any distant ship. The scene is painted in shades of silver and shadow. The starlight is enough to see the outlines of the masts and sails, which loom like dark giants overhead. The sails are mostly furled, save for a topsail catching the light breeze. Our captain prefers an easy night drift when no pressing destination demands speed. I move to the starboard railing, my boots making dull thuds on the planks. The night air is deliciously cool after the day's heat. I inhale deeply and taste salt and a faint sweetness, perhaps from some far-off flowering island vegetation carried on the air. Standing there, I feel almost alone in the universe, yet comforted by the presence of the ship beneath me and my comrades dozing below. The watch tonight consists of just two of us on deck, myself near the bow and Abel at the helm. Even in calm waters, someone minds the wheel to keep us true. Abel is a stocky man from Bristol, and he has the wheel lashed lightly since the course is steady. He leans against the stern rail, humming a quiet tune to himself, one of those sailors' laments. We exchanged a few words at shift change, but mostly we keep silence now, each attuned to our duties. There is an unspoken understanding among us. On watch, especially midnight watch, a soft tread and sharp senses are preferable to chatter. Still, it is reassuring to know another wakeful human is aft, a sense of companionship in the solitude. My job is to keep lookout to be the eyes of the ship, I brought up a long brass telescope, now tucked in my belt, in case I need to inspect a distant shape. Over the next hours, I will periodically roam from starboard to port, then forward to the bow, scanning 360 degrees around us. I'm also listening for any changes. A crack of thunder hinting an approaching squall, the snap of a sail filling oddly, or God forbid, the hull scraping something. But this night is calm as a mill pond. The only sounds to reach my ears are natural, the gentle lapping of waves against the hull, an occasional squeak off a block or pulley aloft, and the breathing of the ship itself as wooden joints flex. Such sounds become dear friends on long nights. Up above, the firmament is ablaze with constellations. I take a moment to admire them. The North Star is low to the horizon behind us, guiding our general drift westward. Directly overhead glitters the mighty band of the Milky Way, stars so thick it's as if someone spilled sugar across the sky. I identify a few favorites. Orion's Belt, twinkling off our port stern quarter, the Big Dipper hanging upside down to the north, pointing to Polaris as always, and in the south, the Southern Cross, though partially hidden by a few stray clouds. Many a time we have navigated by these patterns. Our navigator trusts in the heavens when the compass falters or our position is uncertain. Looking at them now in peacetime, they are simply beautiful, distant and steady. We sailors navigate by stars and find comfort in their constancy. Out here, they are our clock and compass at once. I remember reading that pirate navigators, like all sailors, heavily relied on stars like Polaris for latitude and knew the constellations well. Without the stars, we are blind at sea. Thus, the clear nights are a blessing, and many of us have grown a bit starstruck, in awe of the cosmic grandeur above. In the quiet, my mind wanders to philosophical thoughts. How small our ship is compared to this ocean, and how small the ocean to the span of the sky. Under such a canvas of infinity, one can't help but feel humbled. Perhaps that humility, born of starry nights and endless horizons, seeps into a pirate's soul despite his fierce trade. Beautiful night, Abel's low voice comes from aft, as if reading my thoughts. I reply equally softly, not wanting to disturb the peace. Clear as crystal. We don't need to say more. He likely just wanted the contact of a voice. Hours can pass slowly on watch if there's nothing to mark them. I continue my slow patrol. Now and then, I pause and lean over the railing, peering at the water. In the ship's wake, there's a dim blue-green glow bioluminescence. Tiny plankton stirred by our passage emit sparks of light, creating a trail of fairy dust behind us. It's a phenomenon that never fails to enchant me. The sea can light up like the starry sky, with millions of living lights beneath the surface. I tap the water with a loose rope's end and watch the sudden burst of glow around it. It's like coaxing magic from the deep. Superstitious sailors speak of these ocean lights as phosphorus and often consider them good omen. Some say they are the souls of lost sailors guiding the living. Whether true or not, the sight is comforting and mesmerizing. During my vigil, I also find myself thinking of home or loved ones. This is common on the midnight watch. The stillness and solitude allow thoughts to surface that daylight's bustle keeps at bay. I think of my mother's face, long not seen, of the girl in Barbados who gave me a red ribbon for luck, which I keep folded in my chest, of the possibility of seeing another sunrise. There's a romance to being the only one, or one of two, awake, a silent guardian over sleeping crewmates. Many pirates might be rough, rowdy men, but I suspect, In such moments, even the hardest of us entertains tender memories or hopes. As I make my circuit back toward the bow, I hear a slight sound, the soft strumming of a guitar from below decks. It seems one of the off-watch lads hasn't fully succumbed to sleep and is idly plucking at strings. The notes are extremely quiet. Likely he thinks not to bother anyone. On the open deck, under the stars, the faint melody intertwines with the night air, creating an almost lullaby-like effect for me as well. Perhaps he's playing out of habit, or to soothe himself to sleep. I smile, picturing which fellow it might be. Perhaps Miguel, who hails from Seville and plays haunting Spanish tunes. The music is soothing, and I absent-mindedly walk in time with its gentle rhythm. It brings to mind how the code even allowed musicians rest on the Sabbath, indicating how valued music was to morale, even among pirates. A sudden slight breeze picks up, causing the sails to rustle and the ship to lean ever so gently. Immediately I become alert, gauging if it's a wind shift that needs addressing. It seems to be just a small puff of wind, nothing sustained. I glance at the telltales, ribbons tied in the shrouds, and they flutter northward, then fall limp again. The ship settles back from her lean. Satisfied that all is well, I continue scanning. I pick up the telescope from my belt and train it slowly along the horizon, segment by segment. To the west, where we head, is inky black, the union of sea and sky, invisible, but for a subtle difference in texture of dark. To the south, I catch the remote glimmer of what might be lightning far off, a storm likely, hundreds of miles away. Heat lightning, illuminating a cloud on the edge of the world. It's beautiful, silent from here, like a distant fireworks show blinking behind the horizon's curtain. I make a note of it in my mind. By tomorrow or the next day that weather could reach us or bypass us. I pan to the east, where the stars descend to the water. Nothing there, wait. Perhaps a tiny flash. I still my breathing and look intently. Flash, flash, flash. Yes, it's there. The faint flicker of a ship's lantern, or more likely multiple lanterns, just at the limit of sight. It could be a ship hull down, meaning only its masts above the horizon. Alternatively, perhaps the loom of a distant land with a lighthouse. But we are far from any major lighthouse, as far as I recall. Besides, it appeared intermittent. Could it be a star low on the horizon blinking? I put down the scope momentarily to look unaided. The spot of light is gone. Then a minute later, I think I catch it again in the corner of my vision. I decide to inform Abel. No sense raising an alarm, but another set of eyes is wise. I pad aft and quietly call his name. He responds promptly, stepping away from the wheel and coming to me at the rail. I point out where I saw something and hand him the telescope. We swap roles. He peers diligently while I grip the wheel to keep our heading steady. For a few minutes, we alternate scanning. Abel thinks he might have glimpsed a spark as well. It's very faint. Could be someone on another vessel covering, then uncovering a lantern, perhaps, signaling. Or simply a distant ship, where the rolling motion causes their single light to dip below and above our line of sight. Given the distance and faintness, we reason it's no immediate threat. Likely a merchant or another pirate many leagues away, crossing paths perpendicular to us. If she hasn't seen us, and with our minimal lighting, we are practically invisible. We are safe. We choose to keep note, but not wake. The captain, unless it grows brighter, meaning nearer. Such is often the case in night watch, deciding what is worth disturbing others over and what can be quietly monitored. The The code's tenets of not shirking duty apply strongly here. If I were to nod off or ignore a potential hazard, and it turned out to be a naval frigate bearing down on us, the blame would rightly be mine. So I feel some pressure in these moments, but it's balanced by experience and calm. We reduce our already dim lantern to a mere ember glow to be extra safe and agree to keep both of us on high alert for the next hour. Abel returns to the helm, but stands rather than leans now, scanning the blackness regularly. I resume pacing, adrenaline giving me fresh wakefulness. The guitar strumming below has ceased. Perhaps the player fell asleep mid-tune. Despite the potential of another ship out there, the night remains eerily serene. In fact, the sense of isolation heightens, I feel. We are two tiny watchers in an A32 price, endless dark arena, trying to spot each other's torch. Time passes slowly on such watch. I count stars. I recite a bit of Coleridge's verses under my breath to keep my mind sharp. The night is calm. The night is dark. The ship upon the sea. At one point, clouds slide over a patch of sky, temporarily hiding a cluster of stars. In that absence of starlight, the darkness deepens significantly. One hand reflexively finds the hilt of my cutlass at my side, a habit whenever I feel slightly uneasy. But then the clouds pass, and the gentle gleam returns. I note how reliant we are on starlight alone. Many sailors fear new moon nights. For that reason, utter blackness, where you can't see your hand before your face. This is not one of those nights, thankfully. When the moon finally does rise, it comes as a thin crescent, an elegant silver shard breaking the horizon astern. It's low and not bright, but it does introduce new light and new shadows. Abel and I both observe that under its light, the glimmer we thought we saw is no longer discernible. Perhaps the moon's glow has washed it out, or the ship has changed course or doused lights. Either way, an hour with no further sign relaxes us. We agree it was likely nothing that concerns us immediately. We can mention it come morning debrief, but no need to wake anyone. I notice now how tiredness nibbles at the edges of my alertness. The after midnight hours often bring a wave of fatigue. I combat it as many sailors do, by movement and small tasks. I quietly coil a loose rope that someone left by the pin rail, humming a shanty to myself as I do. Keeping the body busy keeps the mind awake. Then I climb a few steps up the shrouds, not too high, just a little above deck height, to gain a vantage. The cool wind up there helps too, refreshing my face. From this perch, I look down at our sleeping ship. All is still except for Abel's silhouette near the wheel. I feel a fondness seeing our patched sails, illuminated softly from behind by the rising crescent, and hearing a muffled snore wafting up from an open hatch. These men trust me with their lives at this moment. They slumber deeply, confident that I will call out if danger comes. It's a weight of responsibility, but also an honor. I've been on ships where I did not trust the fellow on watch, and so slept with one eye open and weapons close. But here, within our brotherhood, we do our duty with pride. Eventually, the horizon ahead begins to subtly lighten. Not the glow of dawn yet, but the first hint that the night is aging. My watch will conclude when morning twilight arrives and the next shift takes over. I look forward to that moment, passing on the mantle of vigilance and enjoying a well-earned rest. But also, there's a touch of reluctance. Midnight watch, for all its challenges, is something precious. Many pirates have said the same. Those silent hours under the stars are when a man can commune with the sea and his problem silence, own soul. Before my watch ends, I take a final long gaze at the constellations, now slowly being joined by the planet Venus rising before the sun, shining fiercely bright over the east. The beauty of it sears itself into memory. It occurs to me that whoever was on that distant ship, if indeed there was one, likely shared this same starry vista and maybe felt the same smallness and wonder. In such moments, one nearly forgets the labels of pirate or naval man or merchant. We are all simply sailors beneath an indifferent sky. I allow myself one small indulgence. From an inner pocket, I remove a tiny flask of coffee. It's a luxury we rarely have, but I saved a bit from earlier. It's gone cold, of course, but I sip it anyway. The bitter taste and slight caffeine hit push away the last cobwebs of sleepiness. Plus, the familiar flavor reminds me of mornings at home long ago, providing comfort. With renewed clarity, I double-check the compass and our course. We've drifted a bit north of west, but nothing concerning. We can correct after sunrise. Finally, I see a faint band of pale light low in the east. Dawn is approaching, imperceptible yet to those sleeping, but obvious to a watchman's seasoned eye. A new day to come, new unknowns and possibilities. Perhaps today we'll sight a sail to chase, or make landfall for water, or simply continue our journey peacefully. In any event, the knowledge that I and Abel safely shepherded the crew through the vulnerable hours buoys my chest with quiet pride. I walk back to Abel to share a few last words before shift change. We talk in hushed tones about how uneventful, which is good, the night was, aside from that one curiosity. We even chuckle about one of the sleepers who came up mid-watch in his undergarments to relieve himself off the stern, startling Abel, then shuffled back down, mumbling an apology, barely awake. These little anecdotes always get passed along for humor. When the next pair of watchmen emerge from below, rubbing their eyes and pulling on jackets against the early morning chill, Abel and I brief them. Nothing to report, but a calm sea and a fine night, I say simply. They nod, grateful no emergencies are thrust upon them. We exchange friendly claps on the arm as they take our places. The sky in the east now shows a gentle pink tinge. The first bird atern lightly flutters by in silhouette, heading God knows where. The smell of dawn is unique, slightly cooler, a touch of dew in the air, even at sea, and an indefinable freshness, as if the world itself takes a breath. I savor it for a moment. Then, satisfied all is in good hands, I bid the new watch a good shift and make for my hammock. Descending the ladder quietly, I find the hold still mostly dark but stirring. A couple of my mates roll over, sensing daybreak soon. I collapse into my canvas bed, feeling the ache in my legs and the slight sting in my eyes from hours of peering into darkness. These discomforts are a small price for the gift of having witnessed the night's secret beauty. As I drift off, I recall one of the quartermaster's sayings, "A ship is safest at night, when even one true-hearted man is watching over her." Tonight, that true-hearted man was me, as it will be another brother tomorrow, and another the night after. Knowing this, I fall into a contented sleep, the gentle rock of the ship lulling me once more, while above, the first rays of sunrise gild the sails, and another day in a pirate's life begins anew. The calm before a boarding. Dawn breaks with a deceptive tranquility on a day that will soon erupt into chaos. The Caribbean sun climbs higher, its golden light dancing on the gentle swells as the twilight fortune glides silently through the turquoise waters. A mild breeze fills our sails. The morning is warm but not yet hot. It is the kind of beautiful, calm day that would entice any sailor into a sense of ease. And yet, for us, this morning carries a crackling tension in the air. On the horizon, perhaps a league ahead, we have sighted our quarry, a fat Spanish merchant galleon, her white sails bright against the blue. She is unaware of us thus far, but we have been trailing her since first light. Now, the distance closes. A boarding is imminent. The scene on our deck is a study in tightly reined energy. Every man is at his station, performing final preparations with methodical focus, but quietly, almost in whispers. The orderliness would impress any naval officer indeed. We run our ship with more discipline than many a merchant crew in moments like these. The usual jokes and songs are absent. Even the clank of a cutlass being laid ready is softened. We operate in a near hush, like predators stalking prey. I stand near the bow with a spyglass to my eye, observing the target. Through the lens, I see the Spanish ship's stern quarter. She is named El Trinidad, as her ornate nameplate suggests. She seems heavily laden by her low waterline, a positive sign that her cargo holds are full, perhaps with sugar, indigo, or, if fortune favors, silver coin. I note modest armament. I count maybe a dozen cannon per side, likely a merchant with some defenses, but not a war galleon. Her crew, visible on deck, appear relaxed, likely unaware that the sail behind, wave flown false colours, matching a British trader earlier, is hostile. They will know soon enough. Our captain, Avery, moves among us, speaking in low tones, giving each man a clap on the shoulder or a meaningful nod. He hardly needs to issue explicit orders at this point. We all know the plan. We have rigged grapples and boarding lines, stacked cutlasses, pistols, and muskets in strategic spots, and even brought up a few pots of stun powder, essentially sulfur and saltpeter mix, to throw and create smoke. The Jolly Roger flag, our terrifying black banner emblazoned with skull and crossed swords, remains furled at the mainmast for now. We sail under a neutral English ensign as deception until we are in strike range. Only at the final moment will we raise the black and demand surrender. It is the minutes before the clash that etch themselves in memory with peculiar clarity. The world seems to constrict to sensory details. My heart thumps steadily, but not wildly. The anticipation paradoxically brings a focused calm. I feel the weight of the pistol tucked in my sash, the reassuring presence of my cutlass at my hip. My mouth is a bit dry. I sip once from the water skin and pass it to the man next to me. He grins briefly, an encouraging, if tense, grin, and whispers, "For luck." I know some of us quietly mouth prayers. Others recite fragments of the pirate's code about bravery in battle. No man to shirk his quarter, on pain of death. All of us perform final mental checklists. Powder dry, flint tight, blade sharp, courage mustered. The sea itself falls eerily calm, as if holding its breath. It's past mid-morning. Sunlight glints off the gentle ripples. Our ship makes hardly a sound except the soft rush of water at the bow. We've angled to catch up from the windward side, giving us advantage. The Spanish galleon still lumbers ahead, likely bound for Havana or Santo Domingo. We edge closer, now just half a mile behind. Through the glass, I see a couple of their crew climbing aloft, perhaps to adjust sails. I wonder if one will glance back and notice our foremast closing in. But they don't, not yet. On our deck, Quartermaster Jones comes up beside me and murmurs, "Time to run up the colours, Jack." I nod and signal two lads by the halyards. In a practiced, swift motion, the Jolly Roger is unfurled and climbs the mast. black fabric snapping smartly in the breeze. Simultaneously, a gunner at the bow fires a warning shot from our swivel gun, a small caliber cannon, sending a puff of smoke and a cannonball arcing well over the Spanish ship, a clear sign of our intent. The boom echoes across the quiet sea, pandemonium on the enemy deck. Through the spyglass, I see tiny figures suddenly running, pointing. They have spotted our true flag, a sigil that instills fear into every merchant captain's heart. We are close enough now that with the naked eye, I see their helmsman frantically spinning the wheel, likely trying to turn broadside to use his guns, or perhaps to flee. The calm before the storm is officially over. The storm has arrived. Battle positions! Captain Avery roars, breaking our ship's silence at last. It's a deep, commanding cry, and every man springs to life. Our gunners run to the cannons, which we had kept loaded but silent. Boarders cluster near the port side. We aim to pull alongside to their starboard. I am part of the boarding party. Pistol in right hand, cutlass in left. I position myself by the main shrouds, ready to leap once grappled. My heart rate accelerates now, pounding not in fear but in exhilaration. This surging energy right before crossing blades is something I've felt before. It's as if time slows and intensifies concurrently. We are about a cable's length, 200 yards from El Trinidad, when her stern chasers fire 2 plumes of smoke and a whistle of shots over our bow. They misjudge range. The water splashes harmlessly short of us. Some of our crew laugh, a brief, edgy laugh. The tension is broken now by the roar of our own cannons answering. Captain Avery does not intend to sink the prize. Its cargo is our goal. So he orders aimed shots at their masts and capped rigging to slow them. The thunder of our guns is deafening after the morning's quiet. I flinch at the familiar concussion, but stay focused on my target. Our accuracy proves good. One of their smaller topmasts splinters under a ball, a tangle of sail and spar coming down. A cheer goes up from our gunners. We are nearly alongside now. I can clearly see men on the Spaniard's deck arming themselves, some looking resolved, some clearly terrified. The legend of pirate cruelty precedes us, and they know it. I spot an officer, probably the captain, brandishing a sword and shouting orders to stand firm. They likely outnumber us, but their morale is questionable. Many might surrender if given the chance. As we pull a beam at pistol shot distance, our helmsman masterfully matches their speed. "Grapple! Now!" Jones hollers. With practiced skill, several of us hurl our grappling hooks across the gap. Thunk, thunk hooks catch on their rails and lines. We pull, drawing the ships, together, wood grinding on wood with a jolt. The Spaniard's men try hacking at 1 or 2 hooks, but we secure more too quickly. Now comes the final heartbeat of calm, that fractional pause between grappling and boarding. I find myself strangely serene in that fragment of time. Sunlight flashes off my cutlass blade as I prepare to swing across. I hear Jones one last time bellow, "Boarders away, show no quarter till they strike," which is partly for psychological effect. We actually prefer they surrender immediately, so bloodshed is minimal and cargo preserved. But telling our pirates no quarter urges them forward fiercely and tells the enemy resistance is hopeless if drawn out. The pirates cultivated a fearsome reputation for exactly this reason, so fights would be short and victims yield without prolonged struggle. With a primal shout, we leap the gap. I swing on a rope, crashing onto their deck near the forecastle. Immediately, a panicked Spanish sailor lunges at me with a boarding pike. I parry with my cutlass almost by reflex, knocking it aside. "Rindance," I bark in rough Spanish, "surrender," but his eyes are wild. He thrusts again. This time I fire my pistol without hesitation. The ball catches him in the shoulder. He drops with a cry, clutching the wound. I kick his pike away and move on. All around, similar cacophony. Pistols discharge. Steel clashes. Men shout in multiple tongues. A cloud of gun smoke begins to haze the bright air. 2 of our number have tossed those stun grenades, which explode with flash and smoke, startling the foe further. Yet amid this violent storm, my senses oddly focus on small details. I notice the smell of burnt powder and the tang of blood beginning to waft. I hear one of my mates, an Irish giant named Connell, laughing as he swings a belaying pin like a club, having lost his sword in the fray. I see a Spanish officer frantically waving a white kerchief near the quarterdeck stairs, trying to be noticed to surrender, but chaos has not yet died enough for everyone to see it. Within perhaps a minute, though it feels longer in adrenaline time, the resistance largely crumbles. We have overwhelmed their initial defense. Many of the Spanish crew drop their weapons and throw their hands up or dive to the deck. A few stubborn pockets fight on briefly. I engage a determined fellow who slashes at one of our younger pirates. I parry his cutlass high and slam my pistol, empty now, into his temple. He goes down unconscious. As quickly as it began, a stillness begins to descend. I realize I'm breathing hard, sweat in my eyes. A Spaniard near me is whimpering the rosary under his breath, weapon cast aside. Basta! Basta! Enough! Voices cry from their own officers, some in despair, some in pleading. Our captain vaults onto their poop deck and fires his second pistol into the air. That authoritative shot signals a halt. Cease fighting, stand down, comes the order. We pull back from striking any who have yielded. The deck is a mess of toppled men, blood streaks and dropped arms. A few brief struggles are snuffed by our pirates' restraining belligerents, but essentially, the ship is ours. The calm after the storm sets in, broken only by moans of the wounded and the heavy breathing of exertion. I take stock of myself, a shallow cut on my forearm. I hadn't noticed in the heat, probably from a flying splinter or glancing blade. It stings now, but it's minor. Many of our crew look to have fared all right. A couple have more serious wounds, but are upright. On the Spanish side, a handful lie dead or mortally hurt, others nursing injuries. Our ship's surgeon is already hopping across to triage. He believes in tending foe and friend alike once the fight is done, as long as they might be worth saving and potentially working for us as conscripts. The Spanish captain, a dignified older man with a bloodied scalp, kneels and formally offers his sword to Captain Avery. "We surrender," he says, thickly accented. Avery takes the sword with a nod of respect and immediately assures him, in passable Spanish, that if they cooperate, lives will be spared. Relief visibly floods many of their faces. Pirate cruelty was often exaggerated, and most of us prefer mercy if it means a quick capture. True to the unwritten pirate code, we do not harm those who yield. We bind them and set guards, but some of our lads even clap the enemy on the shoulder with gruff congratulations to show no ill will personally. As the initial rush fades, I experience the aftermath, a profound sense of quiet returning, like a gale that passed. The sea's sound comes back. I hear waves lapping against both hulls, creaking of timbers, the flutter of their damaged sails aloft. The sun still shines benignly, as if nothing violent just occurred under its gaze. The calm before has now transformed into the calm after, yet they share a quality. Both are moments where one's mind is sharp and present. Before boarding, calm was anticipation. After boarding, calm is gratitude and reflection. I lean on the rail, catching my breath, and watch as our crew swiftly moves into the next phase, securing the prize. They extinguish lingering sparks from a minor fire near the aft, where a grenade went off, and begin inspecting the cargo hatches with greedy grins. Laughter breaks out as one pirate emerges from the hold, holding a crate of what looks like sugarloaf, and another has found a small chest of coin already, perhaps the captain's pay chest. Meanwhile, I find the lad I saved earlier, young Tim, shaken but unharmed, and clap him on the back. "You did well. Got your first taste of boarding, eh?" He manages a smile and nod. I see in his eyes the same exhilarated relief that likely shines in mine. We survived another one. Looking around, I reflect how this boarding, like so many, went by in a blur of frenzy, bookended by calm, preparation, and calm resolution. In those final minutes, before we threw hooks and surged over, there was a clarity of purpose and a sense of brotherhood that is difficult to articulate. Each of us knew our role, trusted each other, and steeled ourselves in silence. That quiet unity before battle is perhaps the greatest proof of our crew's bond. Some might wonder if fear gripped me in those pre-boarding moments. Honestly, it's not quite fear, more a tingling awareness of danger. Yes, but smoothed by confidence in our advantage and reputation. We cultivate dread in our targets, so fights end quickly, as indeed happened. The fearsome Jolly Roger and our frenzied attack often compelled swift surrender, making full battles rare. This crew surrendered within minutes, likely sparing many lives on both sides. Now, in the peaceful aftermath, we ensure our fearsome image is maintained, but without unnecessary cruelty. The Spanish crew are watching us wide-eyed, likely expecting butchery or walking the plank. Those stories are mostly myth, but they might believe them. Instead, they see us already tending their wounded and joking among ourselves. A few even help our surgeon by translating for an injured Spanish bosun. I see confusion on some Spanish faces. Perhaps we aren't the devils they imagined. Indeed, we can be civilized enough after victory, merciful when it costs us nothing. The performance of brutality is only a means to an end, not gratuitous, at least under Captain Avery's leadership. We'll transfer their crew to our ship, or maybe a longboat eventually, giving them a chance to row to nearest land or another ship. This is common pirate practice. We rarely slaughter captives who surrender, despite tales. For now, they sit subdued under guard, casting furtive glances as we rummage their vessel. The calmness on the sea resumes. Only the evidence of combat remains. A whiff of smoke, scarlet drops on the deck, a list to their mast, where it was shot, through. Seabirds already circle overhead, curious at the commotion, or hoping for scraps. The sun continues its arc, indifferent. I take a moment amidst the bustle to close my eyes and absorb this remarkable stillness. The adrenaline drains, leaving me simultaneously tired and deeply alive. There is always a strange peace that follows battle. Colors seem brighter, breaths feel deeper. I recall how before we boarded, my mind was intensely focused now. In the afterglow, it wanders a bit. I catch myself thinking of the midday meal. All this action stirred appetite, or the prospect of dividing shares later. That'll be a lively, joyous affair this evening. "Jack," Quartermaster Jones calls, snapping me back. "Lend a hand with this chest, will you?" I grin and move to help him lug a heavy trunk up from the captain's cabin. It clinks promisingly with coin or goods. As we heft it, Jones quietly remarks, Textbook work today. They hardly put up a fight. I nod, and he adds with a wry smile. The calm before must have unnerved them more than the storm itself. I chuckle, knowing our swift, silent approach likely rattled the Spaniards. We worked like a well-oiled machine in those calm moments leading in, which made the boarding essentially won before it began. Jones then says low, meant only for me, we lost no one today. He's not prone to sentiment, but I hear relief in that simple statement. I nod gratefully. No pirate lives ended, and relatively few of theirs. A profitable prize, with minimal bloodshed, the ideal outcome. As noon approaches, we begin the process of bringing El Trinidad under our control fully. Some of our crew will sail her behind the Twilight Fortune to a safe cove or merchant-friendly port to unload cargo. As plans are hashed out, I lean on the rail one last time to appreciate the now gentle scene. Two ships rocking side by side on a blue, lazy sea, connected by ropes like friends embracing. From afar, one might think they were simply trading or anchored peacefully, not that a battle had transpired. The illusion of normalcy returns so swiftly after violence, it's almost jarring, but such is the life. Fury and ferocity compressed into short bursts, surrounded by long stretches of aimless calm. Reflecting on the morning's events, I'm struck by how pivotal those quiet minutes before boarding were. In that calm before action, we steel our nerves and align our purpose, and in doing so, we win half the battle already. The Spanish likely felt dread in their calm moments. Seeing our flag and knowing a fight was coming, that dread helped break them quickly. Meanwhile, our calm held determination, and thus, our storm was unstoppable. Jack, you dreaming? Get to it, lad, calls a mate coiling lines. I shake off my reverie with a smirk. There's loot to catalogue and a ship to claim. As I turn to duty, I cast one more glance at the gentle waves and clear sky, imprinting the contrast in my mind. How such a peaceful morning enveloped such fierce events. The calm before boarding will always remain, to me, one of the most charged yet strangely beautiful experiences a pirate can know. In that calm, we feel most alive, balanced on a knife's edge between peril and glory. And when that edge is successfully crossed, as today, the ensuing calm tastes doubly sweet, flavored with victory and the salt of the sea. Treasure myths and hidden coves. Night has fallen softly over our camp by a hidden cove on a small uncharted island. A warm fire crackles on the beach, painting flickers of orange light on the surrounding palms, and the anchored sloop gently bobbing in the calm inlet. We pirates sit in a loose circle around the flames, passing a bottle of rum and spinning yarns under the canopy of brilliant Caribbean stars. Tonight's favoured topic, treasure. Not just any treasure, but the legendary kind whispered about in taverns and forecastles, buried chests of gold, secret hoards on desert isles, lost cities dripping with jewels. In this tranquil moment of leisure, after weeks of sailing and a recent successful raid, our imaginations roam free. The darkness beyond our fire holds no fear for us now. It is simply the backdrop for stories, and oh, the stories flow like the rum. Old Calico Dan, one of our most seasoned sea rovers, leans forward, firelight dancing in his wizened eyes. He has a way of speaking that commands attention, a natural storyteller. Did I ever tell ye about Captain Henry Morgan's buried gold? He begins, voice low and conspiratorial. A few of us smirk, we've heard variations of this one, but we let him continue. He describes how Morgan, the famous privateer, supposedly left an immense cache of Spanish doubloons in some hidden cave near Portobello back in the 1000 670 seconds, gold he couldn't carry when he raided the city. They say it's still there, Dan rasps, waving his pipe, deep in the jungle, marked by a carven stone skull. Many a fool's gone hunting it, and none returned. Young Tom's eyes widen. You think it's true? He asks earnestly. We chuckle softly. Tom's green yet. He hasn't learned how slippery truth can be in treasure tales. Calico Dan shrugs dramatically. Could be. Morgan was a sly one, but he drank and spent most of his loot. Burying treasure ain't a common pirate habit, lads. He looks around to make sure we heed that. Indeed, several of us murmur in agreement. Most of us spend treasure as fast as we get it, on women, drink, and pleasure, not bury it for others to find. I chime in with a grin. As the saying goes, dead men tell no tales, and buried gold pays no debts. This elicits a round of nods and a couple of hear from those who know that pirates generally preferred enjoying their plunder rather than squirreling it away. Still, reality never stopped a good story. The conversation turns to legendary hoards. Diego the Terrible, a Spaniard among us, shares one. En mi tierra, in Panama, we speak of El Dorado, a lost city of gold hidden in the South American jungles. He speaks with reverence, describing a place where the very buildings were said to be sheathed in gold, an entire civilization's wealth waiting to be plucked. We've all heard of El Dorado, of course. It's one of those enduring myths that lured conquistadors to their doom, glittering and unattainable. If it existed, the Spaniards would have found it. I tease Diego gently. He laughs and agrees. See, a myth, but a pretty one. We imagine briefly what it would be like to stumble upon such a city. The idea drifts in the smoky air, towering golden temples reflecting sunlight, piles of treasure, needing not even to be dug up, just sitting, gleaming. It's pure fancy, but on a quiet night like this, we indulge in fancy. Now Sam Bellamy speaks up, a normally quiet American from New England. You all know of Captain Kidd, don't you? There's a murmur of recognition. Captain William Kidd, executed pirate, is famed, or notorious, for supposedly burying treasure. They say he left a mighty stash somewhere up the North American coast, perhaps Long Island or the coast of Nueva Inglaterra. Sam goes on. He was raised near those parts and recounts how farmers and fishermen still dig around old ruins, hoping to unearth Kidd's riches. I myself went digging once as a lad, he admits with a chuckle. Found nothing but clamshells and an angry goat where I trespassed. We all break into laughter. It feels good, this camaraderie. I add a detail from things I've read, being one of the more literate pirates. Kidd did bury some loot on Gardiner's Island before he was captured, that much is recorded, but the authorities dug it up as evidence against him. Not a piece remains for the likes of us. A mock sigh of disappointment comes from the circle. Black-eyed Sue, one of the few women in our crew, disguised as a man to most outsiders, but among us we know her truth and accept her, snorts. If every tall tale of buried gold were true, these islands would be riddled with holes like a honeycomb. She's sharpening her dagger as she speaks, her tone skeptical. Far as I see, only treasure we're likely to find is what we take off fat merchants. Pirates didn't bury their money. They blew it soon as they could on women and booze. That draws hearty agreement. Many of us slap knees or raise our tin cups. True enough, Sue, I remark. Why bury what we can spend in Nassau on a fine rum and a finer lass, eh? More chuckles. It's well known among us that we often spend treasure as fast as it comes. Rum and enjoyment are treasure in their own way out here. The romantic notion of long-term savings isn't usually a pirate's mindset. Life is too uncertain and likely short. The fire pops, sending a swirl of embers briefly upward. For a moment, nobody speaks. The night chorus of cicadas and gentle surf fills the pause. I gaze into the darkness beyond our cozy firelight, to where shadows of the jungle meet the starlit beach. The silhouettes of vines and boulders could hide anything: a chest of gold, a lurking foe, or just a family of crabs scuttling. It makes me think of how many coves like this we've anchored in, each with its own whisper of intrigue. This particular cove was known among buccaneers as a careening spot, quiet, hidden, with a sloping beach perfect for heeling a ship over and scraping barnacles. We spent the day here careening our sloop, scrubbing her hull in the shallows. We do this to keep her fast. Pirates often careened in secluded bays to maintain their vessels, albeit making themselves vulnerable while careening. Work done. Now we relax under the stars, letting the ship's hull dry before refloating her on the midnight high tide. Such coves, though chosen for careening or hiding, inevitably come with myths attached. Perhaps some crew careened here decades ago and left behind a secret stash. It's happened a few times in history, though rare. As if reading my thoughts, Roger, our carpenter, says in a hushed tone, "You know, I heard tell this very island's got a secret smuggler's cave." He gestures vaguely to a rocky outcrop at the cove's far end, half shrouded by brush. An old Spanish smuggler used it to hide contraband, gold and silks. When he died of fever, his ghost guarded the hoard. The way he says it, in the low light with his accent, sends a playful shiver down some spines. I grin. "Oh, shall we go looking then?" I prod. Roger winks. "Nah, the ghost can keep it. I've no fancy to fight a spirit over a chest of silk." This sparks another round of banter about ghosts. Some pirates truly are superstitious. We avoid certain isles, reputed cursed, or say a prayer when Street Elmo's fire glows on the masts. An eerie weather phenomenon. Talk of ghostly guardians and cursed gold mixes with the treasure tales naturally. One-eared Ned claims he once found a little cache on Tortuga. Not ghost-guarded, but he swears a black snake slithered out of the chest when he pried it open. Nearly bit him. That's why I got this one ear. I jumped so hard, I ripped my earlobe on a branch. We roar with laughter at the image. Ned laughs too, patting his single earring. True story. Or, devil take me. Sure, Ned. After the laughter ebbs, there's a comfortable silence again. I sip from the bottle passed to me and feel the pleasant warmth of rum spreading in my chest. My mind wanders to an actual treasure moment in my own past. Years ago, I was with another crew that dug up a box of silver pieces of 8 on a tiny isle off Cuba. Turned out it was a recent burying by a Spanish captain shipwrecked there. We essentially robbed a robbed stash. Hardly legendary stuff, but it made for a memorable day splitting real coin on the sand. I share this anecdote now with my comrades, describing the glee of seeing silver spill out under my shovel. They listen eagerly. Real treasure stories, no matter how small, are rarer than fanciful ones. That day I believed every treasure tale ever told. I conclude. Of course, I spent my share within the month. The bottle is nearly empty when our captain finally speaks up. He'd been quietly gazing at the fire, content to let the crew jabber. "You know," he says in his deep, calm voice, "the greatest treasure I ever saw isn't in a hole in the ground or a lost city. It was in the hold of the Ganj I Sawai." We hushed. The Ganj I Sawai was the Mughal treasure ship Henry Avery, whom our captain ironically was named after by his mother. took in 1695, one of the richest hauls in history. Our captain saw it firsthand as a young man under Avery's command. There were heaps of gold moidores, diamonds big as your thumbnail, raw silk bale on silk bale, he recalls softly, eyes shining with the memory. Some of us have heard the story but never tire of it. That capture's spoils were so vast it nearly defies belief. Avery and crew supposedly got £600 per man plus jewels. Hearing about it, straight from one who was there, is as close as any of us will get to such a trove. No need to bury that treasure, the captain adds wryly. We divided it equal, and every man sailed away rich. Most lost it. Rich too. He looks around meaningfully. He's one of the few from that raid still pirating, having squandered his fortune and returned to the sea. A contemplative mood settles briefly. We're reminded that legendary treasure can be very real, but fleeting. To lighten things, I grin and say, "Well, Captain, maybe lightning'll strike twice and we'll snatch an East Indiaman stuffed with gold ourselves one day." He tips his hat. From your lips to Providence's ears, Jack. We toast to that improbable dream. The conversation meanders back to myths. We discuss the rumored treasures of Lima, when Spanish priests spirited gold out of Lima to hide from revolutionaries, only to have a pirate named Thompson bury it on Cocos Island. Some swear it's still out there. Others bring up Blackbeard's treasure, legendary but never found, supposedly hidden along Carolina banks or Bahamas, shoals, in truth, likely spent during his life. Each myth blends into the next under the starry sky, and we delight in them knowing full well they are largely a myth. At some point, the rum is gone and eyelids grow heavy. Before drifting to my bedroll on the sand, I walk to the water's edge. The cove is mirror calm, our sloop's reflection rippling in the starshine. I think about how we, in a sense, live a mythic life, already free men on the high seas, taking fortune by the cutlass. Do we really need buried treasure fantasies? Perhaps not need, but they sure are fun on a quiet night. As I kick a bit of sand over the fire's embers, I murmur a last thought to whoever still listens. Mayhaps the real treasures, the friends we share the rum with. This earns a good-natured groan. Jack's drunk, speaking poetry now. Someone jests. I chuckle and flop onto my blanket, hands behind head, looking up at a sky thick with stars. One shoots across, a brief streak. A good omen? Hard to say. In the silence, I hear waves lapping gently and a nightbird calling. The myths and legends we spun tonight hang in the humid air, mixing with the smoke of our doused fire. In my dreamy state, I fancy that if one were to wander into the jungle now, perhaps following Roger's phantom cave story, one might indeed stumble upon something unexpected. A rusted dagger, a scattering of old coins mossed over, a skeleton gripping a map. Who knows? These islands hold their secrets. But come dawn, we'll sail on, chasing tangible prey rather than phantoms, as is wise. Before sleep, I muse that though buried treasures and ubiquitous treasure maps are largely a myth, for real pirates, the allure of them brings us together. They are our campfire tales, tying us to those who came before and those who'll come after. Each generation of sea rogues dreaming of one lucky find to set them up for life. Even if we suspect it's all folly, we keep a little glimmer of hope maybe, just maybe, one day on some quiet shore like this, our shovels will strike wood and iron and we'll pry up something marvelous. With that cozy thought, I shut my eyes. The last image in my mind is of a simple wooden chest, locked and heavy, emerging from sand under golden sunset light. A dream of treasure, if ever there was one, whether myth or reality. It makes me smile as I drift into deep, satisfied slumber beside my brethren, in this hidden cove that for one night felt as enchanted as any story we told. Shore leave and seaside taverns. Soft lantern light spills from the doorway of the seaside tavern, painting warm golden swatches on the moonlit dirt road. From inside comes a muffled chorus of shanties and laughter, the unmistakable revelry of pirates on shore leave. I push open the swinging door and step into a lively sanctuary of music, smoke, and camaraderie. After weeks at sea, this tavern by the beach is like a second home, a place to spend our hard-won treasure on food, drink, and merriment, rather than bury it beneath the sand. The air is thick with the scent of spilled ale, roasting pork, and tobacco. A fiddler in the corner saws a jaunty reel, while a few dancers, sailors, and local girls with flowers in their hair whirl in a makeshift clearing by the hearth. At the long oak bar, tankards clink, and a ruddy-cheeked barkeep is doling out frothy brews as fast as patrons can slap coins down. I weave my way through, spotting several of my crewmates already well into their cups. "Jack, over here," hollers Connell, waving a huge ham hock in greeting. He's secured a large table near the open window, where the night breeze mixes with tavern heat. Around him are gathered half a dozen of our crew, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. Plates of food clutter the table roast, chicken bones, half-eaten loaves of bread, peels of tropical fruits, and of course, bottles and tankards galore. A serving girl no sooner sets down a fresh round of rum punch than Connell sweeps her into a spontaneous jig, making her squeal, then laugh, as he spins her away and back, much to the table's cheering. I join the table, sliding onto a bench between Miguel, who is gently strumming a guitar, adding atmosphere, and Tom, young and wide-eyed at his first real pirate carouse. Tom has both hands wrapped around a sizable beer stein, as if he can't quite believe it's his. "Some shore leave, eh, Tom?" I clap him on the shoulder. He grins, foam on his upper lip. "Aye, it's grand, and grand it is. Seaside taverns like this in Nassau, for that's where we are docked this week, are famed for their rowdy, welcoming spirit. This one has low timber beams festooned with fishing nets, and the Jolly Roger flag of some retired pirate hung proudly in the rafters. The proprietor long ago learned that catering to buccaneers is profitable, if one can tolerate their antics. Tonight, the place is almost exclusively filled with pirate crews from various ships in port. I see some familiar faces from other voyages. A wave here to an old shipmate. A raised glass there to a one-legged fellow we patched up months ago. The line between friend and rogue blurs on nights like these. We are all brothers of the sea in a tavern. A busty barmaid sweeps by carrying a tray of steaming meat pies. Ned, ever gallant even when tipsy, stands to bow and relieve her of a few pies for our table, tucking a coin into her corset with a cheeky grin. She winks in return. There's an easy flirtation that permeates in the air. Several local women, some likely professional company, others just enjoying the revels, move among the tables, perched on knees or leading men by the hand out to the dance floor. Black-eyed Sue, dressed tonight in a borrowed gown rather than her usual deck garb, is arm wrestling a burly pirate from another crew. To the delight of onlookers placing wagers, the music and laughter swell, echoing in the smoky rafters. Our fiddler friend strikes up a popular tune, Spanish Ladies, a bittersweet farewell song, and a spontaneous sing-along erupts. I tilt back my head and join the chorus, belting out, We'll rant and we'll roar like true British sailors, along with 20 voices. The tavern practically shakes with our boisterous harmonies. Tom is a bit off-key, but singing with all his heart. I catch his beaming face, and it makes me grin. There's something deeply comforting about a tavern full of pirates, in full song, as if for a moment, all our rivalries and dangers are forgotten, united by melody and rum. Between songs, the clink of coins and roll of dice signals some gambling in a corner. Sure enough, a lively game of hazard is in progress atop a barrel. A few of our lot wander over to try their luck. We've got coin to burn, and indeed many pirates gamble freely. Though some captains forbid it on ship, here on land it's fair sport. I toss a shilling on a card game Miguel is dealing, lose it just as quick, and laugh it off. Easy come, easy go. Such is pirate wealth. The pirate code itself often banned gambling aboard to prevent quarrels. But on shore, anything goes. I lean back with my refill of grog rum diluted with water and lime, and savour the scene. How different this is from the austere discipline of life at sea, or the peril of battle. Here, under low lamplight with a tin cup in hand, I feel truly relaxed. I overhear snatches of bragging at the next table, a crew recounting their latest capture in dramatic fashion. One swears he saw the enemy captain cry and beg. His mates guffaw and slap the table. We all understand the need to embellish our exploits a little in tavern talk. It's part of the theatre of being a pirate, and the tavern our stage, where we momentarily become heroes of our own stories. Captain Avery is not with us. He's likely meeting the port governor privately to, grease the wheels that allow us to berth and spend freely. Nassau's authorities can be tolerant if properly persuaded with coin. Meanwhile, we enjoy the fruits of that arrangement unabashedly. The barmaid returns to our table with a large clay jug of Kill Devil, Crude Island rum. Courtesy of the house for the famous crew of the Twilight Fortune, she announces slyly. We cheer and invite her to sit a spell. She does, sipping from Connell's cup and listening with feigned awe as he launches into a wildly exaggerated account of our latest prize. He holds court, describing how we bravely boarded 50 Spanish Marines, in truth, maybe a dozen, and how the enemy captain tried to hide behind a cannon until our own Jack, he thumps my back, hauled him out by his wig. The barmaid gasps on cue, eyes twinkling. She's heard enough pirate yarns to spot fancy, but she plays along for better tips. And it works. Connell slides 2 silver pieces into her apron as thanks for the jug. As the night deepens, an easy fellowship blankets the tavern. Mixed crews share tables now, competitors at sea buying each other rounds on land. A group of us shuffle outside for a moment, onto the tavern's porch to catch a breeze. The sea is just down the slope, glimmering with the moon's path. We can hear the gentle crash of waves. One pirate from another ship passes around a long clay pipe of West Indies tobacco. We each take a puff, exhaling clouds of fragrant smoke into the balmy night. One might expect fights when drunken pirates gather, and indeed sometimes things spark. But tonight has that genial atmosphere, perhaps because all crews present recently had success, so spirits are high and grudges low. Only once do I see a tense flare-up. Sue's arm-wrestling foe lost more than coin and muttered a crude insult, which earned him a swift tankard to the head from her. He reeled, others roared, and then even he laughed, apology given. Crisis averted. Back to revelry. Back inside, the fiddler slows it down. He draws out a mellow tune. Lowlands away, a sailor's lullaby. Pairs of dancers sway together more gently now. I find myself leaning on the bar next to Miguel and Ned, quietly humming along. Tom has fallen asleep with his head on the table. First shore, leave will do that. The hour is late. Many have stumbled out to find beds or ships or other pleasures. Those of us remaining are pleasantly drowsy. I strike up a soft conversation with the barkeep, a grizzled man who once sailed with Henry Morgan. He speaks of how taverns like his in Port Royal sank beneath the waves in the great earthquake of '92, and how he moved here to Nassau to start anew. We share a solemn nod to fortunes gained and lost. At our table, Connell begins a rousing final toast. He stands, albeit wobbling, and raises his flagon high. To the lads and lasses who sail the sea, may our pockets be heavy and our hearts light. We echo the sentiment with hearty hurrah, and drain whatever remains in our cups. Indeed, at this moment, our hearts feel light. This is why we risk our necks under the black flag, for camaraderie and moments of joy like these, where life feels rich and free. Shore leave eventually ends come dawn or the next day. We'll stagger back aboard and return to the austere rhythm of the waves. But the memories forged in seaside taverns linger sweetly. Many a cold night on watch, I've warmed myself, recalling nights like this, the laughter, the music, the taste of spiced rum on my tongue, and the friendly weight of a comrade leaning on my shoulder in the song. For all the blood and toil in a pirate's life, these moments of celebration are our solace and reward. As the tavern prepares to close and the last fiddled notes fade, we gather our sleeping and our stumbling and guide each other out into the pre-dawn chill. Seagulls are already beginning to cry as we wander toward the docks, arms slung over each other's shoulders, voices still humming a half-remembered chorus of some drinking song. The sky to the east hints at coming light. We'll likely catch a few hours of sleep aboard before Captain calls muster. I take one last look back at the tavern light, now dimming as lanterns are snuffed, the door swinging shut. From within, the barkeep flips the sign to closed. I smile, tipping my hat in thanks though he can't see me. Until next time, I murmur, because there will be a next time as long as our fortune holds and our ship sails. We'll return to some snug tavern in some welcoming port and live again like kings for a night. In the quiet early morning, we make our way down the sandy lane, singing softly, almost lullaby-like now, a final shanty. Perhaps 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. One of us begins in a gravelly whisper, and we all join in, chuckling. Off-key and bleary, we are nonetheless content. Behind us, the seaside tavern sits dark and silent, keeping our secrets until we return. Ahead, the gentle harbour ripples await, and beyond that, the wide open sea and whatever adventures the next voyage brings. But for this night, this glorious shore leave night, we truly lived free and merry, brothers of the coast at peace in our favourite haven ashore. Storms, stars, and sea legends. The air is heavy and charged with tension. All day, we sense the mood of the sea darkening. Now, as dusk gives way to night, the storm is upon us. Our sloop pitches and groans amidst towering black waves. The sky split by jagged forks of lightning that illuminate a scene of wild chaos. Yet within this chaos, a strange calmness resides in my heart. Perhaps it's resignation, or the knowledge that we've weathered tempests before. As the storm's fury mounts, I find myself thinking of the old sea legends we share, to make sense of such moments, those tales of gods and monsters that feel so real when the ocean reveals her wrath. Hold fast, lads. Captain Avery's voice cuts through the howl of wind as we scramble to reef the sails. Rain lashes our faces like stinging needles. Thunder booms overhead, so loud it seems to shake the masts. In flashes of blue-white light, I catch glimpses of my crewmates straining at ropes, their drenched figures momentarily statuesque against the swirling darkness. The ship's bow slams into a wave, and green water cascades over the forecastle, nearly knocking Tom and Ned off their feet. They clutch the rail, knuckles white, and resume their tasks, teeth grit in determination. For a moment, the wind dyes oddly the eye of the storm, perhaps, and in that eerie lull, the stars peek out above, brilliant in a ring around the black core of the tempest. I gaze upward, rainwater streaming down my face, and spot Orion's belt shining defiantly. Star navigation in weather like this is impossible, of course, but seeing them comforts me nonetheless. It reminds me that beyond these roiling clouds, the heavens remain constant. That thought steadies me more than the rum in my belly. The wind roars back with vengeful force, a sudden squall hitting from the starboard side. "Lash yourselves if ye need," roars Quartermaster Jones. I loop a stray line around my arm and belay it to the capstan, freeing my hands to help shorten the jib. Connell and I wrestle the canvas as it flaps like a mad creature. Street Elmo's fire, ghostly blue flames crackle atop the mainmast, one of those natural phenomena sailors both fear and marvel at. The glow casts an unearthly light on our deck. Some say it's a good omen, others claim it's souls of dead sailors guiding us. Given our situation, I accept any good omen, scientific or not, so I choose to feel heartened by the sight. Between thunderclaps, I recall an old legend Diego shared on a night much calmer than this. The story of La Tromba Marina, a demon of the sea that travels in waterspouts and storms, capriciously dragging ships to the deep. Looking at the swirling black funnel skirting near our port side, a waterspout dancing dangerously close, I can see how men conjured demons to explain such freakish fury. The waterspout twists and contorts like a living thing, briefly illuminated by lightning. "La tromba! La tromba!" I hear Diego shout, crossing himself. Others cling to whatever faith or superstition they hold. I spy Miguel mouthing a prayer in Portuguese, and Ned, ever the pragmatist, cursing every deity he can name to let us be. Our ship crests a massive wave, and for a gut-lurching second hangs in mid-air. Time slows. My heart stops. Weightlessness engulfs us. Then, we slam down with a bone-shaking crash. The mainmast shudders violently. A sharp crack I whirl to see the topmast snapping off like a twig under some immense gust. It splashes into the sea, yard and all, mercifully falling clear of deck. "There goes our top-gallant mast," someone cries. "No time for sorrow. Better lost wood than lost lives." "Pump the bilge," Quartermaster bellows. I know without looking that seawater is pouring in from all sides. The carpenter and a team will be manning the pumps furiously to keep us afloat. There's an awful legend of the Flying Dutchman, a ghost ship doomed to sail storms forever, never reaching port. An image flashes in my mind of our sloop meeting. That fate, spectral and waterlogged, crew of corpses, but I force it away. We are living men, and living men fight. I think of Davy Jones's locker, that mythical resting place at the bottom for drowned sailors. Not tonight, I vow. I will not join those ranks tonight. All hands, ride it out. I shout to no one in particular. It's a redundant cry, for everyone's already doing all they can. But hearing my own voice gives me courage. Suddenly, a different sound, a high-pitched wail rises above the wind. It sounds almost human, a keening cry. Sue, near me, shouts in my ear. The banshee wails. She's grinning wildly, hair whipping her face. Trust her to find thrill in even that omen. But indeed, I know the superstition. A banshee's wail portends death. I grit my teeth, possibly just the rigging singing under strain. But in that adrenaline-soaked moment, it does sound like a mournful woman's cry. Lightning strikes the water frighteningly close to starboard, a sizzling spear of light. The ocean there glows electric blue for an instant. Tom yelps, ducking instinctively. I smell ozone and sulfur. Zeus is angry, mutters Miguel in Portuguese. A bit of classical myth amidst our ordeal. Indeed, one could imagine the storm god hurling bolts at our impertinent little craft. We are like ants in a giant's wash basin right now. Yet through it all, we work in concert, each knowing his task. This discipline and order, even in a storm, is our pride. There's no mutiny against the storm, only unity to survive it. Connell, big as he is, climbs partly up the remaining mast to cut loose a tangled sail threatening to capsize us. He looks like a hero out of legend for a moment, perched against black clouds and fire, hacking at rope with his cutlass as torrents lash him. The sail falls free. The ship sighs as if relieved of a burden. Gradually, oh so gradually, I sense the worst is passing. The howling doesn't increase. The waves, while still mountainous, come slightly less unpredictably. Our sloop rises and falls, exhausted but alive. We're through the squall line, Cap'n. Ned hollers from near the helm, where he's been assisting the quartermaster and captain wrestle the wheel. Captain Avery, drenched and steady, gives a nod. He's the picture of calm. I suspect he's been humming a sea chanty to himself throughout, as is his wont in crises. He always said panicking never saved anyone. Bit by bit, the maelstrom loosens its grip. Thunder rolls away to the east, chasing some other souls. The rain gentles to a steady patter, and distant stars emerge like hesitant guardians. We lost much of our sail and some spars, but our hull and hearts remain intact. A cheer wells up amid us as we realize we've done it. It's a ragged cheer, full of weariness and triumph. In that cheer is a thanks to whatever powers, whether God or Neptune, or just our own seamanship that saw us through. The deck is a mess of pooled water, broken crates, and loose line. The dawn's first faint glow is touching the western clouds, giving shape to the retreating storm. The morning star Venus twinkles above the horizon, benign now. I slump against the mainmast stump, catching my breath, feeling the bruises and minor cuts announce themselves across my body. Sue comes and sits by me, leaning her head back and closing her eyes with a grateful sigh. Around us, the crew is already making jokes. "Is that all you've got, you big blowhard?" Connell shouts at the departing storm. Laughter, honest, relieved laughter follows. As we begin to bail water and assess damage, tongues loosen in the afterglow of survival. "I told ye the banshee couldn't have my soul," one man boasts, making a warding sign. "I thought I saw the Flying Dutchman off our port bow during the worst of it," says Diego, eyes wide. Truly, a ghostly ship in the Rhine, lightning flash. Whether true or a trick of the light, none can say. But such talk is part of our healing. We share the legends we felt connected to in the height of fear. One admits he prayed to Nuestra Señora de la Mar, Our Lady of the Sea. Another swears he saw a mermaid riding the storm's waves, guiding us away from rocks. Given our state of mind, I don't doubt each saw what he needed to see. I stand, stretching, and gaze out at the clearing sky. the rising sun breaks through in shafts of pink and gold, illuminating the receding black clouds. The storm now, but a dramatic backdrop to a peaceful dawn. The sea, fickle as ever, begins to calm, the monstrous waves subsiding into rolling swells that glisten under the fresh sunlight. In the rigging, a few brave seabirds land, as if to inspect the aftermath. There's a serenity now that contrasts so starkly with the chaos prior. It reminds me of many a sailor's tale, how after a devilish storm, the sea lies as gentle as a lamb, almost as if apologizing. This quiet morning, crew busy with repairs, is when someone usually starts a tune. Sure enough, Miguel produces his battered fiddle from below, miraculously dry, and begins a slow, soft melody, perhaps Shenandoah or something akin a song of longing and travel. The notes float over the calm air, mixing with the soft splash of our bilge buckets and the creaking of timbers. We hum along as we work, and I marvel that hours ago we were fighting for life under raging skies, and now we're making music. The stars, gone pale in daylight, gave way to storm, which gave way to stars again, and now sunshine. Through it all, our shared stories and songs kept fear at bay and bolstered courage. I think of those ghostly legends, Davy Jones, the Dutchman, the Banshee, and how we outsailed them all last night. At least in our minds, we outsailed not just a storm but death's agents themselves. Not today, Jones. Not today, I whisper with a smirk, looking over the rail into the now blue sea, imagining old Davy scowling that he missed our souls this time. Sue hears me and pats my arm. We showed 'em, eh? She says. Indeed we did. As we continue onward, battered but unbroken, I feel a kinship with all sailors past who faced the wrath of nature and lived to spin yarns about it. The storm tested us, and our sea legends gave us a language for our fear and awe, perhaps turning terror into narrative, making it something we can share and thus bear. By the next tavern stop, you can bet we'll be exaggerating this night's events, each adding flourish. Ned will insist lightning struck his cutlass and made it glow with street. Elmo's fire. Diego will elaborate on the ghost ship's sighting. And that's fine. We earned the right to mythologize a little. In truth, reality was impressive enough. We endured one of nature's fiercest tempests with minimal harm due to skill, discipline, and maybe a sprinkle of luck or blessing of those sea spirits we half believe in. I take one last look at the now distant storm clouds on the horizon, dark bruise fading against morning's pastel. A new day begins, and with it, hope. I silently thank the stars, those constant friends, and even the old sea gods and creatures, just in case. Then I roll up my sleeves and join my comrades in mending our wounded ship, humming a shanty as the sun climbs, shining bright on calmer waters ahead. Final reflections in a quiet cove. Dusk settles gently over the quiet cove, painting the tranquil waters in hues of lavender and rose. Our sloop lies at anchor a short distance from the sandy shore, her once battle-scarred hull now calm and silhouetted in the twilight. The day's work is done. The sails are furled, decks coiled and tidy. A few of the lads are still murmuring softly on deck, or dozing in hammocks strung up to catch the evening breeze. But I have rowed ashore alone in the skiff, seeking a moment of solitude in this peaceful harbour that cradles us like a mother's arms. I sit on an old driftwood log at the water's edge. The sand is cool under my bare feet, still retaining the sun's warmth. Tiny waves lap gently just a few feet away, a rhythmic hush-hush that matches the slow breathing of the world at rest. Above, The first stars emerge in the purpling sky. One by one, they blink into being. Familiar friends. There's Venus low in the west, the summer triangle overhead. A slender new moon hangs, like a silver coin. Its reflection shimmers on the cove's glassy surface, rippled occasionally by a lazy fish or the oar of a returning dinghy from another ship across the bay. I take a deep breath of the balmy evening air, heavy with the scent of salt and blossoming night flowers from the tree line behind me. With that breath comes a sense of profound contentment. We made it. Through storms and battles, merriment and hardship, we have come through. This cove, hidden and serene, feels like a reward, a place to finally reflect on all that has passed. In the stillness, memories drift through my mind as gently as these evening tides. I think of life before the sea, a half-forgotten boy who once gazed at the ocean from a farm hillside, yearning for freedom. I smile at how destiny answered that call, in ways both harsher and richer than naive me could imagine. I remember the nervous excitement of setting sail from Port Royal the first time, leaving behind the known for the promise of adventure. How far I've travelled, not just in leagues, but in spirit. I scoop up a handful of sand and let it run slowly through my fingers. Golden grains catch the last light. Each grain might be a day, an hour of this tumultuous pirate life, slipping away quietly once spent. How many remain? None can say. A pirate's life is often short, they told me when I signed on. Yet here I sit, weathered but alive, with treasures of experience beyond mere gold. Across the cove, faint laughter carries from our ship, the men sharing a final joke before night's hush fully claims them. That brotherly sound warms my heart. Pirate brotherhood, that was perhaps the greatest treasure we found. We lived by a code, we faced death side by side, and we enjoyed roaring laughter in taverns and quiet camaraderie in the dead of night at sea. We became a family bound not by blood, but by salt water and shared freedom. I am proud of that. We proved, in our own rough way, that men can be free and honourable to each other, even outside society's strictures. My gaze turns to a small chest resting in the skiff tied nearby. It holds what remains of our last haul. Some silver, a string of pearls, a pair of jeweled pistols I claimed. Tangible wealth, soon to be divided. I rise and walk to the skiff, running my hand over the chest's lid. I won't lie, the riches are sweet, but under this softening sky, they feel oddly secondary. The true riches are the memories swirling around me in this cove. The silver will be spent by and by, the pearls traded, but the story of how we snatched them, that lives on in each of us, to be told and retold whenever we gather. A gentle breeze ruffles the palm fronds behind me, making a sound like distant rain. Fireflies begin to wink in the underbrush, tiny lanterns mirroring the stars above. It reminds me of nights on deck when bioluminescent plankton glowed in our wake. Another natural wonder, imbuing ordinary moments with magic. There were many such moments, singing under infinite starry skies, quiet midnight watches spent in contemplation, the rush of dawn winds filling our sails at sea's daybreak. These, too, are treasures, perhaps the kind one only recognizes at the end of a journey. The journey is indeed nearing its end for me. I can feel it in my bones. I've lived the pirate life longer than most get the chance. The Golden Age of Piracy is fading now. Governors and empires crack down with a vengeance. Many a famed captain's head has decorated a gibbet these past years. Some of my dearest friends took the king's pardon and settled. Others met less fortunate ends. Our own captain, bless him, plans to accept an amnesty in Nassau next season and turn privateer under commission, a safer venture. Perhaps that is why tonight feels so poignant. It might be the last time I sit like this as an outlaw, free in a forgotten cove, with nothing but stars above and salt breeze around. And I find I am okay with that. A quiet retirement to some tropical hamlet sounds downright heavenly after the storms we've weathered. I've made and spent fortunes, seen men at their cruelest and kindest, cheated death more times than I can count. There is little left to prove. Maybe I'll even open a tavern. I chuckle softly at the thought and call it the Quiet Cove. I imagine telling young sailors tales by the hearth, passing on whatever scrap of wisdom our rough lives taught. I wander back to the waterline and wade in a few steps. The sea is warm and silken, gently lapping at my calves. Phosphorescent plankton sparkle around my ankles. The ocean's parting gift tonight. Kneeling, I cup my hands and splash some water on my face. It tastes of salt and freedom. I think of all the sea legends we carried with us, how we once feared the kraken might drag us down, or that a mermaid's song could lure us off course. In the end, those were just stories. We were our own monsters and saviors, forging our destiny on fickle winds. I whisper a thanks to whatever spirits might be listening, not for treasure or survival this time, but simply for the vast tapestry of experiences. Behind me, I hear soft footsteps on sand. Turning, I see black-eyed Sue, having rowed ashore quietly in her own little dinghy. She raises a hand in greeting and approaches. "Thought I'd find you here, Jack," she says gently. She carries a small bottle of rum. Of course she does. I grin and accept when she offers a swig. We stand side by side in the shallows, watching night fully cloak the cove. The silence between longtime shipmates is comfortable. After a while, she says in a low voice, "It's a beautiful world, eh?" I reply simply. Together we look out at our anchored sloop, its lanterns flickering like grounded stars. The reflection of the moon shimmers in the water, stretching a silver path toward us. It occurs to me that path looks like a road home. Perhaps it is time. Sue seems to read my mind. She nudges me. "You thinking of moving on?" I nod slowly. "Aye, feels about right." She's quiet for a moment, then clinks her bottle lightly to my imaginary one. "To moving on then, whatever port we find beyond." There's a hint of sadness in her tone, but also respect. We've seen enough brothers fall to know leaving on one's own terms is a fortune in itself. We drink to that, the rum smooth and smoky. Then she leaves me once more to solitude, sensing I want to savor this moment alone. "See you on deck, by and by," she whispers, and trudges back up the beach. I return to my driftwood seat, the night now at its zenith of calm. Frogs croak softly inland. A night heron gives a single raspy call from a mangrove. These small sounds underline the stillness. I stretch out, lying on the sand, propping my head on a piece of log. The stars hypnotize above. I find my favorite constellations and bid each a fond good night. Orion, steadfast hunter, is dipping low. How many midnights has he guided our course? The North Star twinkles far to my right, a reminder of journeys yet to be taken, perhaps on land this time. I let my eyes slip shut and listen deeply, to the hush of the cove, to the faint laughter of my crew. Off in the distance, they've likely started a quiet tune on a fiddle. Aboard, to my own heartbeat, this life. What a life it has been. There were days of terror and days of bliss. long stretches of boredom punctuated by intense flashes of exhilaration. I've known brotherhood and betrayal, love and loss, hunger and abundance. I wouldn't trade any of it, not even the worst days, for they make this gentle night all the more precious. It dawns on me that the cove's tranquility feels almost like a benediction, a final harbour after the long voyage of youth and ambition. If the sea taught me anything, it's that everything is transient. Storms pass, dawn comes, treasure spends, songs end, but also that each moment shines if you let it. Like this one, a lone pirate at peace under the cosmic sky, at one with the world. I scoop a bit of sand again and watch it drift away on the breeze. I feel a slight weight lift from my soul as I do, as if I'm letting go of the life that was, making room for whatever comes next. Perhaps tomorrow I'll speak to Captain about taking that pardon and retiring. Perhaps I'll find a small island farm and plant cassava, or maybe sign on to a legitimate trade ship as an humble sailor to still smell the salt air, but without the blood. Or maybe I'll indeed run a tavern and welcome wayward sailors, trading my stories for theirs. Whatever the future holds, I know the spirit of these pirate years, the daring, the camaraderie, the fierce love of freedom will stay with me. I find myself murmuring lines from an old sea prayer we half remember. O Lord above, send down a dove with wings as sharp as razors to cut the throats of them there blokes what sell bad rum to sailors. I chuckle, a tavern prayer, irreverent to the end. But then more solemnly I add a quiet, sincere, thank you for seeing us through. It's not clear if I address it to a deity, the ocean, or the universe at large. All three, perhaps. I open my eyes one last time. The cove is nearly dark now, just starlight and the distant glow of a ship's lantern or two bobbing on the ink-black water. The night is wonderfully warm, like a blanket. I realize I could sleep right here on the sand, lulled by wavelets. Perhaps I will. Before I do, I commit everything to memory. The feel of the damp sand, the sound of that far-off fiddle now, starting a lullaby. Bless Miguel, he never tires. The sight of our beloved sloop at anchor, gently rocking as if also dozing. In the morning, we'll sail out of this cove and back into the world. But a piece of my heart will always remain here, in this quiet cove of final reflections. A part of me will sit forever on this driftwood log, watching the stars, knowing I lived a life true to my nature and earned this peace. With that comforting thought, I close my eyes. The last thing I hear as I drift into a deep, contented sleep is the soft lapping of the waves, like a mother's whisper. Rest now, my son of the sea, rest. And I do, under the kindly watch of the heavens in the quietest, most gentle cove I have ever known.